Chapter 791. Green Dragon Chalene, you guys go to the south and use all your strength to fight those stupid demons, just like when I'm around. After Beligaju finished speaking, he took off the gloves on his hand and threw them aside. He smiled at Hellion Vivian. No one can beat me in the game of killing. If a rotten flower wants to take you away, she has to ask if I'm willing. Hellion Vivian deeply felt that His Highness' description of Ni Feng would never change. A rotten flower. Let's go to the north. Beligaju raised his head and looked at Zhuge Yun. There was a hint of evil in his smile. Take out the thing you're wearing on your neck. Zhuge Yun paused and widened his eyes. How did you know? Don't talk nonsense, I don't want to snatch it. Beligaju frowned his good-looking brows and was full of disdain. Besides, other than Vivian, I don't like to touch any other human. Zhuge Yun didn't hesitate and reached out to take out the pendant hanging on his neck. This is our Zhuge family's heirloom body. Buddha bone. It's Buddha bone. Little King of Hell rushed forward with his huge axe. His demonic red eyes lit up. Big devil, how did you know that this guy has a string of Buddha bone? Beligaju's thin lips curled up slightly. I saw it a long time ago, but I didn't know it was Buddha bone until you said that someone's original body was a rotten body. Jing Wushuang is the only body on Mount Meru. Thousands of gods and Buddhas have to pass by him before they can be listed among the Buddhas. It shouldn't be described as rotten, right? Little King of Hell felt that this man just cared. He cared more about another person than he did for Hellion Vivian. Beligaju swiped his finger. Do you have a problem with that? Not at all. The Little King of Hell covered his neck and winked at Hellion Vivian. What he meant was, tell your man to restrain himself. It's not good to kill people at any time. Hellion Vivian pulled Beligaju's other hand and said, the Buddha bone can conceal your aura. We will enter from the north gate. The Green Dragon and Chalene are at the south gate. Are you trying to create a diversion? I want to kill everyone who has designs on you. Beligaju lowered his head and smiled. You are mine, but these people can't recognize this fact. Hellion Vivian looked at him and said, are you full of demonic energy now? Why is the murderous aura so heavy? Unless you don't want to see me, nothing else will make me want to kill you. Beligaju's eyes became even redder. Come, let me ask you a question. What? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Beligaju leaned over and whispered in her ear, if one day you have to make a choice, demon world or Buddhism, what will you choose? Did you remember something? Hellion Wei had been feeling strange since just now. Beligaju's voice became much gentler. Some unimportant images. When I was looking for you in the ancient tomb, some images appeared in my mind. But those are not important. What's important is what will you choose? Hellion Vivian was still holding his hand and said in a lazy voice, Demon world. Liar. Beligaju's eyes were red like flowing blood. Hellion Wei paused for a moment. She pulled out a hand and pinched his overly handsome face. How am I lying? Listen, I don't care what you are thinking. The result is that I will go wherever you are. You are so handsome, why are you so insecure? Why would I be insecure? Bailey Jiaoju tilted his head arrogantly and pulled her back. When we enter the city, no matter what you see in the magic mirror, you have to remember your current choice. You have to repeat your love for me 100 times no matter where you go. You have to know that it's not easy to find such a good master like me. Yes, yes, yes. Hellion Vivian picked up his hand and kissed it. So now you can let me enter the city without worry, right? Beligaju did not say anything. He pulled her forward with his long legs, which meant that he had acquiesced. The bigger fetus was very disdainful. Repeat that I like him 100 times. Does he think that he is chanting scriptures? Does he want mother to coax him? Is he a child? Father must have remembered something. He is very uneasy now. The smaller fetus's voice was getting weaker. What can make father uneasy? The bigger fetus narrowed his eyes. He knew his cold-blooded father better than anyone else. Other than mother, there was nothing that could make him uneasy. Have all the arrangements been made? At this moment, Ni Feng was sitting on the main seat in the Ni family's meeting hall. Her long black hair was scattered over her robe, and a faint gentleness was exuding from her body. At this moment, her corpse aura had turned into real spiritual aura. She had entered the final stage of inhalation. There were no more exorcists who could detect her flaws. Ni Feng was almost perfect now. The exorcists had 100% trust in Ni Feng. Their attitude was completely dependent on her. Feng, don't worry. We have prepared according to your instructions. No one will enter the city. We have seen the situation outside. With so many demons, it is impossible for anyone to come back alive. It is not easy for them to enter the city. They will definitely attack the city and use their family members to confuse us. Guarding the exorcist city is the most important thing now. If seniors can think this way, then Feng is at ease. Ni Feng coughed softly. What I am most afraid of is that a malicious spirit will take advantage of our soft-heartedness and manipulate my father or brother Yun to confuse everyone. While Ni Feng was speaking, a disciple of the Ni family suddenly ran in from outside the door. Eldest miss, we met 2 exorcists at the city entrance. They said they have a secret to disclose. A secret? Ni Feng laughed bitterly. There are indeed malicious spirits who want to disturb the peace in our city at this time. Who are the 2 exorcists? Is it Brother Yun? When Zhuge Yun was mentioned, Madame Zhuge's hand that was holding something tightened. The person who came to report shook his head. No, it is the 2 exorcists in the city. They want to meet the elders of the major families. After hearing that, Ni Feng let out a long sigh and lowered her eyes. Her voice was soft but penetrating. These malicious spirits are really smart. Once they get in touch with the elders of the major families, they will have the opportunity to harm them. When that time comes, all the uncles and aunts will be controlled by the malicious spirits. Exorcist City will truly be finished. If that is the case, then what are we hesitating for? One of the elders of the major families stood up and said to the person who reported, "Take a few people with you. Tie them up with a dog's blood red rope and lock them in the dungeon. Don't let anyone come in contact with them." Chapter 792. As for the so-called secrets that they mentioned, none of us are interested in them. At such a dangerous time, all we have to do is to think of a way to protect the Exorcist City. Ni Feng smiled gently. Uncle Xiao is right. Thinking of a way to protect the Exorcist City was what she really wanted to do. Whether it was the exorcists in the city or those who had escaped from the ancient tomb, they would never have thought that even if they knew her secret, they would not have the chance to say it out loud. They would only be treated as malicious spirit. Haha, that woman is indeed smart. She has always been so smart. Every time, it seemed like that woman had one. But what was the use of that? She would be the only one who would get the city in the end. That woman must have died in the ancient tomb long ago. Now, she only needed to deal with one person. Wu Shuang. Ni Feng turned her head and coughed softly. I'm worried that Beligaju will bring the 4 great mythical beasts to attack the city. You're the only one who can stop him. Of course, there are still a few demons who will protect me in the city. Back then, he extracted my Buddha bone. I don't know what he will do this time. But there's one thing, stop him. Don't hurt him, okay? Jing Wushuang paused for a moment, then said in a gentle voice, okay. After saying that, he walked into the endless darkness. The resentful baby followed behind him, its tiny fingers clutching the corner of his clothes. Its eyes were fixed on his blood-dripping sleeve. Master, your body. Resentful baby, do you know? Sometimes, Buddhism isn't completely likable, is it? Jing Wushuang lowered his eyes to look at the little one. His eyes were gentle as he said, many people who have become Buddhas have walked past me because I am the only body tree in Shumi Mountain. However, there is only one person who stopped to talk to me, water me, and read scriptures to me. Everyone says that I transformed into a human because I realized the fate of Buddha, but that's not the case. I did it because of her. I don't know when it started, but I wanted to see what this person looked like. I've been in Mount Meru longer than she has, so I know very well what these Buddhas want. They don't want to see anything or people that are beyond their control. But she shouldn't be bound by these things, because she's the variable of the 3 paths. She was reborn in the fire of hell, so she can live on in the most brilliant manner and like the person she wants to like. The ghost baby had dark circles under its eyes. I know what Master wants to do. As long as the demonic mirror exists, the person who will make Master not feel lonely will return. However, you only have one piece of Buddha bone left. If even this piece is gone, you will truly die. Body has no roots and cannot be reborn. There's still one more. Jing Wushuang smiled and twirled the hair of the little figure with her hand. I left it in a very safe place. With it, it can attract the light of Buddha. When the phoenix is reborn, of course, it will shine brightly. The ghost baby frowned. Master, do you think there's another possibility? Otherwise, why would you leave 2 pieces of Buddha bone? It's a foolproof plan. Jing Wushuang lowered her voice and coughed heavily. We can't ignore any traces of her return. But the most important thing now is to resist Beligaju. That man never knows when to stop. At this moment, at the entrance of the exorcist city, a dozen exorcists surrounded 2 battered and exhausted seniors. Are you crazy? You want to tie us up? The 2 men looked at the people surrounding them in disbelief. Their tone was full of absurdity. The exorcists looked at each other. They didn't say much to them and directly attacked. Walking from the ancient tomb to the entrance of the city had already exhausted their strength. The 2 men never thought that the big monsters outside didn't make them lose hope, but after entering the city, they felt a chill in their hearts. Call all the elders of the big families here. Did you hear that? All right, even if you can't invite the elders here, you must tell them that Miss Ni is not the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl. She's a corpse, she. Before the man could finish speaking, one of the exorcists stuffed the man's mouth with a yellow talisman. You want to slander Miss Ni and cause chaos in the city? Save it, you malicious ghost. Malicious ghosts? How could they be malicious ghosts? The 2 exorcists struggled violently. They still wanted to say something, but they were already dragged away. Not far away, Hellion Vivian watched everything quietly. She folded her fan and said, "You can come out now." Zhuge Yun and the other exorcists were full of anger. How could they do that? How could they treat the people who came back with great difficulty as malicious ghosts? Do you know who is the best at keeping secrets in the world? Dead people. Hellion Vivian said unhurriedly, "Now, we are the only ones who know Ni Feng's secret. Of course, she will find a way to shut us up. The only way is to let the people in the exorcist city believe that no one can walk out of the ancient tomb alive. Anyone who comes back is possessed by a malicious ghost, not a living person at all. This way, no matter what you say, no one will believe me. No one will listen to the fact that she is not the Phoenix girl." When the exorcists heard Hellion Vivian's words, none of them felt good. In other words, we are the bad guys now? What a joke. Would they end up like the other 2 if they also left like the other 2? Thinking of this, old Li could not help but glance at Hellion Wei. All of them had changed their clothes and identities. Moreover, when they entered the city, they did not make a big fuss, nor did they look for someone to expose Ni Feng's secret immediately. This was all because they obeyed the other party's command. At first, they did not understand. Now, they all understood. They had thought too simply. Hellion Vivian did not answer them. She looked at the noisy street, as if she had already expected this result. If I'm not wrong, the protection of the entire exorcist city is now in Ni Feng's hands. All the exorcist families will obey her 100%. No one will notice that all the spiritual energy in the exorcist city is gathering in one place, and no one will notice that the spiritual energy in their body is draining away. The more respected an exorcist is, the more he will become her nourishment. As she said this, Hellion Vivian shook her hand in order to let the exorcists see clearly. The wind in front of them changed obviously. Layer by layer, it flowed to the west. Zhuge Yun was stunned by this scene. Wei, brother Wei, you. Chapter 793. Hellion Vivian retracted her hand and asked, "What's wrong? You actually have spiritual energy in your body. This is such a big matter. Why does Brother Wei's expression look so calm?" Hellion Vivian understood why Zhuge Yun was surprised. She smiled and said, "Oh? Well, I used to have spiritual energy, but I lost it for a period of time due to some reason. Now that I've eaten the Sarira, I've recovered. But this is too amazing. Zhuge Yun still hadn't recovered from the scene just now. Spiritual energy weathering? I've never seen it before. The other exorcists had also never seen anyone who could transform spiritual energy. They looked at Hellion Vivian with deep shock in their eyes. Well, now is not the time to be amazed. Hellion Wei smiled and said to everyone, let's get down to business first. No one would have thought that a group of us would enter the city in disguise. However, we need someone to lead us into the Ni family. Hellion Vivian paused and turned to look at Zhuge Yun. Her eyes were full of deep meaning. Let's go find Madame Zhuge first. My mother. Zhuge Yun widened his eyes in confusion and pointed at his nose with his finger. Old Li frowned, but didn't Brother Wei just say that in this situation, we've become the incarnation of the evil spirit in the eyes of others? Wouldn't we be walking into a trap if we go find Madame Zhuge? The Zhuge family has always been upholding justice. Madame Zhuge won't be lenient just because the evil spirit is her son. What if Madame Zhuge knows that Zhuge Yun won't become an evil spirit? Hellion Vivian smiled. Since it's the family heirloom of the Zhuge family, it must have its use. The person who wears the body Buddhist bone is not only blessed, but also impervious to evil spirits. As the pillar of the Zhuge family, it's impossible that Madame Zhuge, young Master Yun's mother, doesn't know about this. In other words, the only person in the exorcist city who hasn't been deceived by Ni Feng is Madame Zhuge. The exorcists were shocked when they heard the last part. Even Zhuge Yun himself did not expect that with just a string of body Buddhist bones, the other party could actually think of so many things, and it was completely correct. Brother Wei, how did you guess all of this? Zhuge Yun was speechless. Hellion Vivian looked at him and said, it's simple human nature and reasoning. Madame Zhuge loves you so much, she won't accept the news that you were killed so easily. Ni Feng guessed that some of us might have survived. Moreover, you must have been blessed since you were born, so you must be one of the survivors. Therefore, when Ni Feng was dealing with Madame Zhuge, she said more than the others. She also insisted that you were possessed by a malicious spirit in order to make Madame Zhuge give up. However, she wouldn't have thought about the body Buddha bone. Madame Zhuge has always been smart, so it's easy for her to see through Ni Feng's lies. Moreover, all the exorcists in the city have taken the initiative, except for the disciples of the Zhuge family. Just now, Elder Li also said that the Zhuge family has always been upholding justice. Now that the exorcist city is surrounded by demons, Madame Zhuge will definitely take action, unless she has already guessed Ni Feng's plot. After hearing Hellion Vivian's words, the exorcists looked around and realized that the disciples of the Zhuge family were indeed not in the exorcist city. If Ni Feng didn't mention it, they wouldn't have noticed. How sharp is this person's eyes? How can she see so many abnormalities at a glance? It's normal for the madam of one of the 4 major families to bring 2 or 3 attendants into the Ni family for a discussion. Hellion Vivian continued, even if there's only a small chance of survival, we must have our own people in the city. Let's go find Madame Zhuge. Okay. Of course, none of the exorcists objected. Hellion Vivian held the body in her hand and turned to look at the little king of hell who was playing with the demon. Is this Jing Wushuang's Buddha bone? Are you interested in his affairs? The king of hell's son stuffed the dizzy monster into his chenkuan pouch and said with a pacifier in his mouth, I've told you before, this person is always fully prepared. If you want to be reborn, you can't do without the Buddha's light from hell. Of course, he has to keep a trump card to fight against fate. This body is probably the last piece of Buddha bone he has. Speaking of which, after you reincarnated, he knew that you needed the Buddha bone for your rebirth, so he removed the Buddha bone from his body. I guess he wanted to use this method to attract the light of 1,000 Buddhas. After listening to him, Hellion Wei pondered for a moment. Her eyes met with the son of the king of hell's crimson eyes. You kept mentioning the word fate from the beginning. He mistook me for someone else because of fate, right? Smart. The little king of hell said with the pacifier in his mouth, I like to deal with smart people. He is the body. Every person who wants to become a Buddha has to pass by him. Do you know what this means? He originally represented Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't want changes in the world, but he let you be reborn. This is against the Tao, and he has been targeted for a long time. He is a smart person, so he made backup plans. In other words, no matter who you are, only by doing this can the real Phoenix come back. Of course, if he mistook you for someone else, he will regret it for the rest of his life. Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. The little king of hell raised his eyebrows. What? Did you think of something? Share it with me. Nothing. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes. I just suddenly thought of a saying. If you want to deceive everyone, you have to deceive yourself first. For example, I lost all my memories because my Buddha bone was removed by someone. Is it possible that Jing Wushuang lost a part of her memory? The little king of hell shook the tall hat on his head. I haven't thought about this. His real body is the body, so his most important bone will also be the body. Hellion Vivian held the Buddha bone in her hand tightly. Why would he let his most important bone leave him? The little king of hell widened his eyes. You mean he? Find the magic mirror first. Hellion Vivian smiled. You're right, all the answers are in the past. The little king of hell nodded and coughed softly. Let me say this first. I didn't come here to ask you to divorce the great demon. If the past is really different from the present, you have to remember that you are the great demon's wife. Don't change your mind. Who said that domestic violence is not acceptable, and that we should divorce as soon as possible? Hellion Vivian glanced at him slowly. The king of hell's son chuckled and said, if you were with him, he would only use violence on you. If you weren't with him, he could use violence on everyone, and you might not even be able to survive. Chapter 794. He's not violent. Hellion Vivian interrupted the little king of hell with a smile. She looked at the tall and straight figure walking in front of her. He's very elegant. The little king of hell chuckled with his pacifier in his mouth. He's quite elegant when he kills people. Hellion Wei was speechless. She was speechless. Well, what you're worried about won't happen. I don't plan to change my mind, and I won't like him as much as I like anyone else. I think this kind of thing won't change no matter how many years have passed. We've arrived at the Zhuge mansion. You can knock on the door. Hellion Vivian thought that it would be best to let a child knock on the door. After all, there were no children when they entered the ancient tomb. The little king of hell smiled evilly and carried the axe to the door. He originally wanted to be gentle. This was the most perfect image he could maintain in front of humans. A polite and handsome young man, who knew that he would forget to control his strength when he pinched the monster just now. When his hand slammed down, the iron door was dented. Peng! All the disciples of the Zhuge family rushed to the door, including Madame Zhuge. This was the most anxious day in the Exorcist city. Madame Zhuge had more secrets than anyone else. She even thought of going out of the city to find Zhuge Yun. But when she heard Ni Feng's words during the meeting, she gave up on this idea. Because she knew that the other party was going to kill every single one of those who had survived the ancient tomb. But why? Madame Zhuge had been thinking about Ni Feng's purpose. The more she thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. She didn't let the disciples of the Zhuge family go out because she didn't want her son to be greeted with despair when he came back. But this couldn't be done. Ni Feng was so unpredictable that Madame Zhuge felt scared. If the Zhuge family kept acting strangely, Ni Feng would definitely notice something. Then, how could she protect the Zhuge family? Madame Zhuge's first reaction was to calm herself down when she heard the noise outside the mansion. She couldn't reveal any flaws. What is it? Madame Zhuge heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the little boy with a pacifier in his mouth. When she looked back, her body suddenly trembled and she clenched the white handkerchief in her hand. So there are guests. Old Liu, what are you waiting for? Let them in first. Yes. Old Liu didn't see their faces clearly, so he lowered his head and invited them in. In the courtyard, Madame Zhuge was calm all the way. After they entered the study and closed the wooden door, Madame Zhuge held Zhuge Yun's hand tightly. Her eyes were red. It was obvious that she had recognized her beloved son. Zhuge Yun's throat was also a little dry. Mother, I'm fine. It's all thanks to Brother Wei and Brother Ju that I didn't suffer any injuries along the way. Now, the whole Exorcist city is looking for survivors from the ancient tomb. Madame Zhuge took a deep breath and said, I was worried that you would be tied up like a fool. Looking at your dressing, you must have avoided those people's eyes and ears. Zhuge Yun smiled and touched his head. It's all Brother Wei's idea. He also said that Mother is the only one in the city who understands. Madame Zhuge turned her head and looked at Hellion Vivian. Then, she knelt on the ground and said, Miss Wei, we will never forget your kindness. Hellion Vivian didn't expect Madame Zhuge to be so polite. She quickly reached out and supported Madame Zhuge. She smiled and said, Madam, you don't have to do this. I have my reasons for entering the ancient tomb, and I need your help with something. Miss. Zhuge Yun was dumbfounded. Mother, you mean Brother Wei? Oh, no, it's her, she. Silly child, can't you see it now? Madame Zhuge shook her head with a smile. You blockhead. Didn't you notice how much Brother Zhu cares for Miss Wei? Zhuge Yun's mouth was still open. I always thought he was a homosexual. Madame Zhuge didn't know whether to laugh or cry after hearing her son's words. On the contrary, after old Li found out about Hellion Wei's identity, he was even more shocked. Little Brother Wei is a girl? Yes. Hellion Vivian tidied up her clothes. She knew why old Li was shocked, but it didn't matter. She looked into Madame Zhuge's eyes and said, I need to go to the Ni family to look for something. I hope Madame Zhuge can help me. You want to go to the Ni family now? Madame Zhuge was worried. The Ni family is too dangerous now. Hellion Vivian smiled. Madam, don't worry. Someone will distract Ni Feng. The South Gate will launch a siege soon. She will put all her attention on it. But I have never seen Ni Feng leave the Ni family. Even if someone attacks the city, she will ask the exorcists to deal with it. Madame Zhuge analyzed. Hellion Vivian put away the body Buddhist bone and looked at Beligaju. She will definitely go this time because she wants to see someone. That was why this man asked the Green Dragon and Cheline to go to the South Gate. It was a trap. Beligaju looked at her with a faint smile on his face. He was actually happy. He reached out and pulled her over. His voice was cold. Jealous? Don't be jealous. Her life will be gone when she sees me. The little king of hell heard this and suggested, actually, you can use your handsome face to lie down and let Miss Ni take advantage of you. She won't have the mood to care about the magic mirror. Brat, before I kill you, you'd better shut up. Bailey Jiaoju reached out and picked up the son of the king of hell. Then, he tossed him out of the door as if he was a fly. The little king of hell pulled himself out of the wall again. He did not care. He carried the axe and said to Beligaju, to deal with you, Ni Feng will definitely ask Jing Wushuang to go to the South Gate. Even the Green Dragon and Cheline won't be able to hold on for long. So, we need someone to go to the South Gate. Don't we have you? Beligaju looked at him casually. The little king of hell frowned. The underworld can't interfere with the affairs of the human world. This is the rule. Don't you want to save your true love? Beligaju sneered. His words made the son of the king of hell bite down hard on his pacifier. When did you start having designs on me? Only the Azura king of hell can summon the flames of hell. Beligaju's deep eyes flashed. You're obviously a spirit of the underworld, but you were born in the heavenly axiom. You're the child who made the entire underworld restless. Isn't that you? The little king of hell pulled out the pacifier and narrowed his eyes. You used your divine sense. You still have divine sense. Everyone in the world thought that your divine sense was long gone. Why do you still have divine sense after you fell? Chapter 795. Of course, I will protect it. Beligaju curled his thin lips. He didn't do anything, but those black feathers that symbolized evil still fell down. The king of hell's son only saw the danger that could engulf heaven and earth. He reached out and hugged Hellion Wei's leg. With his small height, he could only hug a person's thigh. He whispered again, listen to me, don't ever change your mind. If you change your mind, not only will the humans suffer, but the people of Tiandao won't be able to escape either. This man still retains his divinity, so what's the deal with his demonic nature? Damn, he's so good at pretending. Why do you always think that I will change my mind? Hellion Vivian pulled the little one up and whispered into his ear, Do I look so unreliable? The little king of hell looked serious and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "No, you are very reliable. The main thing is that I don't believe in the great devil's character. Who knows what he did in the past? The main thing is that he still has his divinity. Do you know what this means? This means that he can go to Tiandao at any time. No wonder he said that he could destroy the Buddha's golden lotus without you recovering your memory. I thought he was just saying it casually. Now it seems that this person is not just saying it casually. With his divinity, he can even go to Buddhism without any problem. But to stop the tampering of reincarnation, I still need to recover my memory, right? Otherwise, His Highness would have started a fight without saying anything. The little king of hell nodded, but his voice was still soft. The only way to stop the tampering of reincarnation is to let the Phoenix Dharma return to the human world. I know. You go to the south gate first. I will arrange in the city. Hellion Vivian sent the little one away. Madame Juga didn't know what they were talking about. She just saw the little one with a pacifier in his mouth saying that he was going to attack the city. She felt that it was a little forced. How old is he? Can he really do it? Miss Wei, do you need me to send a few people to follow the little master? Hellion Vivian smiled and said, there is no need. The disciples of the Juga family are not suitable to attack the city. The battle outside is too intense. Furthermore, people will notice that something is wrong. However, it was true that they should not stay in the manor. All the exorcist families were guarding the city. If the disciples of the Juga family did not go, they would be noticed after a long time. Therefore, Madame Juga, I will have to trouble you to give an order for all the disciples of the Juga family to go out and defend the city. If necessary, you have to pretend to capture the survivors of the ancient tomb. Whatever the other exorcist families do, the Juga family will do. No problem, I'll arrange it now. Madame Juga looked at Hellion Vivian with admiration in her eyes. No wonder they could come back safely. This little girl was smarter than she thought. She could even think of this. Hellion Vivian turned to look at Juga Yun and the others. iPhone will definitely send people to investigate if the Juga family suddenly sent people here at this time. Try to delay the time. If you are discovered, don't panic. Just act normally. But don't mention that I got the Saria. Let iPhone think that I am dead. She should think so now, so it will be fine if you don't mention it. No one disagreed. All the exorcists nodded. After getting along with each other for a while, they all knew that Hellion Vivian had her reasons for everything she did. After everything was arranged, Hellion Vivian looked at Madame Juga again. Madam, my friend and I need to change our clothes. We will wear what your servant usually wears. Upon hearing Hellion Wei's words, Madame Juga called two people over and asked them to take off their outerwear. Elder Li wanted to ask something, but when he saw that person's indifferent back, he did not ask. Juga Yun could not help but ask, Brother Wei, Miss Wei, can you tell us what your identity is? Why is your spiritual aura so strong? Is it only related to the Saria? Also, you seem to be very familiar with the Phoenix girl. You just came to the Exorcist city and you insist that iPhone is a fake. How did you guess these things? I didn't guess it. Hellion Vivian put on her outerwear. After thinking for a while, she replied, because I am the Phoenix girl, so I know she is a fake. Crack. Elder Li's teacup fell to the ground with a loud sound. When the hot water splashed on his face, he did not feel any pain. He just felt that his 3 views and 6 senses had disappeared. The other exorcists turned into puppets at this moment. Even their breathing seemed to have slowed down. Juga Yun's eyes began to shake violently. Brother Wei, I didn't hear clearly. What did you say? Hellion Vivian put on her clothes and looked at Juga Yun. There was a smile in her voice. What? Is this how you feel when you see the exorcist you admire the most? You are really the Phoenix girl? Then why didn't you say anything? Juga Yun was so surprised that he could not speak properly. He grabbed his hair, but his eyes were brighter than ever. Elder Li was also waiting for the final confirmation. Needless to say, the exorcists were so excited that their fingers were trembling. Hellion Vivian pulled down the collar of her clothes. She did not care that much. "Oh, you didn't ask before, so I didn't say anything." Zhuge Yun burst into tears. What did she mean by she didn't say anything before he asked? Shouldn't she tell him directly? The exorcist he admired the most had followed him all the way. When they set off, he even said that he would protect her. The exorcists had the same thought as Zhuge Yun. If they knew that she was the Phoenix girl, they. Hellion Vivian looked at everyone's expression and laughed again. "Even if I said it, no one would believe me. Don't forget, my spiritual energy has just recovered. When I entered the exorcist city, I didn't even have any spiritual energy. It was too unconvincing. Besides, everyone seemed to think that Ni Feng was the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl. No matter how much I said, it would be useless. It would only be taken as a lie, so I didn't say much." The exorcists were stunned. They had to admit that if they were not in this situation, would they believe her? The answer was no. Because for so many years, the idea that Ni Feng was the Phoenix girl had been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people in the exorcist city. They did not even care about the place where the Phoenix girl was once mentioned by an eminent monk. Since the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl was in the Ni family 500 years ago, it must be in the Ni family this time. That was what they thought for so many years. The exorcists did not know how to describe their feelings at this moment. Elder Li stood rooted to the ground, stunned. An unprecedented regret welled up in his heart. He suddenly remembered the excuse he gave to Ni Feng in the graveyard. She was clearly his benefactor, yet he had actually mistaken her for someone else. Furthermore, he had made such a ridiculous mistake. Chapter 796. Elder Li felt as if the cold tea on his face could seep into his heart. He opened his mouth with difficulty. The exorcists also looked at Hellion Vivian, hesitating to speak. Hellion Vivian knew what they were going to say, but she did not care. Ni Feng is indeed smart and good at disguising herself. Everyone will admit their mistakes seriously. Don't think about the past now. Madam, let's go to the Ni family immediately. The little king of hell should be ready. Okay. Madame Zhuge, who came back to her senses, nodded heavily. For so many years, Madame Zhuge had been to the Ni family countless times. After the fall of the Zhuge family, every time she stepped into this place, she felt uneasy. Only this time, she felt like she had a plan. She thought that maybe this was the power of the Phoenix girl. Not only because of the name, but also because the person behind her seemed to be powerful enough to make anyone believe her. "Madam." The disciple of the Ni family stopped Madame Zhuge, indicating that it was a routine check. Madame Zhuge cooperated and stood naturally. The security was very tight now. Everyone who entered and left had to be checked. No weapons were allowed in. Madame Zhuge glanced at the disciple of the Ni family. "Where's your lady?" "In the meeting room." After the disciple of the Ni family checked and found that everything was normal, he bowed and said, "My lady just said that she wanted to ask you something." Madame Zhuge raised her eyebrows and said to the two people behind her, "Since Feng'er is looking for me, you can wait in the courtyard first." "Yes." Hellion Vivian lowered her eyes. She knew that Madame Zhuge did not want them to confront Ni Feng directly to avoid any problems. However, Hellion Vivian was not thinking about this. The reason why she agreed to stay in the courtyard was so that she could find the magic mirror when no one was looking. After Madame Zhuge gave the order, she followed the disciple of the Ni family into the meeting room. Ni Feng was sitting in the main seat. When she saw Madame Zhuge, she coughed lightly and stood up like a junior. She was very respectful to Madame Zhuge. "Auntie, you're here. Feng'er, you're not feeling well. Don't stand up." The person who said this was an elder from another family. Only then did Madame Zhuge realize that all the senior exorcists of the aristocratic families were gathered here. They were looking at her as if they were waiting for her to say something. Madame Zhuge recalled what Hellion Vivian had said to her on the way here. "Madam, you haven't let the Zhuge family's children come out to defend the city for so long. Ni Feng will definitely find a way to make you say why. When the time comes, you can use the fact that these children are still young as an excuse and don't mention the matter of capturing survivors." It was as the child had expected. Madame Zhuge looked up at Ni Feng and sat in her seat as usual. She wanted to hear what Ni Feng had to say to her. Auntie. Ni Feng waited for her to take a sip of tea before she coughed and said, I heard that all the disciples of the aristocratic families went to defend the city, except for the disciples of the Zhuge family. Why is that? Does Auntie have any doubts about my arrangements? Maybe Feng is too immature to ask such a question, but this is a critical moment for the survival of the Exorcist city. Please forgive Feng rudeness. Madame Zhuge frowned as usual and said generously, Feng why would you think so? The disciples of the Zhuge family didn't come out immediately because those children are too young. They don't even have the ability to kill demons. After you finished your arrangements, I went back to teach them something. That's why I wasted some time. Now they should have put on their exorcist suits and gone to defend the city. Just like what Feng said, this is a critical moment for the survival of the exorcist city. The Zhuge family has always been protecting the good and warding off the evil. We won't do anything wrong. Miss, as Madame Zhuge said, the disciples of the Zhuge family have gone to defend the city. The servant stood beside Ni Feng and said in a low voice. Ni Fengshuang listened to the news reported by her disciple and smiled. It seemed that she was overthinking. Madame Zhuge was not as easy to fool as other exorcists. But there wouldn't be any trouble. Even if those exorcists entered the city, they would not be able to change anything. No one would believe the words of a person who was possessed by an evil spirit. Now, even Madame Zhuge, the only one who was not easy to deal with, had a certain degree of trust in her. As long as she waited for another 8 hours and the exorcist city was still not broken, she would be able to take everything away from the Phoenix girl and be truly resurrected. At this moment, a rumbling sound was heard. It sounded like something was hitting the city wall. All the elders of the exorcist families stood up with panic on their faces. What's going on? What's happening outside? It's a dragon. Someone looked at the sky. Look, it's a green dragon. Like the others, Ni Feng also looked towards the sky in the south. Sure enough, there was an azure dragon in the sky. Not only that, the azure dragon seemed to be following someone's orders. It was using its tail to hit the city wall, and its whole body was filled with hostility. Ni Feng saw this scene and was not worried at all. Instead, her eyes lit up. It's him, he's here. The corners of Ni Feng's lips curled up. She had been waiting for this day for so long. Everything was finally on the right track. In less than 8 hours, all of this would be hers. Ni Feng was not worried that the city wall would be broken because as long as no one entered that place, the exorcist city would always be intact. No one would know the exorcist city's weakness. 3 feet below, there was a place guarded by the Tian Dao. Even if it was discovered, no one would have a way to break it. Not to mention that Hellion Vivian was already dead. Even if she was not dead, how could she compete with the Tian Dao with just spiritual energy? That person was someone who could subdue a group of demons. Even the demonized Beligaju could only fight to a draw with that person. Unless he had never fallen from the heavens, but how could that be possible? Therefore, not only would the Dharma power of the Phoenix be hers, but that man would also belong to her in the end. Inform everyone to go to the south gate. Ni Feng gave the order and walked out of the meeting room quickly. Behind her were the elders of various aristocratic families, including Madame Zhuge. When Madame Zhuge walked out, she deliberately glanced at the cherry blossom tree in the courtyard. The 2 people who were originally standing there were already gone. They were so fast. Madame Zhuge heaved a sigh of relief. With this, her mission was completed. Whether the exorcist city would survive or perish, and whether the path of reincarnation could be saved, all depended on those 2 people. However, she had been to the Ni family so many times, but she had never found the magic mirror that they were talking about. Would they really be able to find the mirror within the allotted time? Chapter 797. Hellion Vivian originally thought that Ni Fenghui hid the magic mirror in the meeting room because the most dangerous place was the safest place. Since it was in the Ni family, the meeting room was the best location. However, after looking around, Hellion Wei frowned. Could it be that it's not here? If it was not here, then where could it be? It's here. Belagaju suddenly reached out from behind and held her hand. There was a mischievous smile on his face. But it's not on the ground. Hellion Vivian made way for him and subconsciously looked under her feet. It doesn't look like there's a secret layer. Hell. Belagaju's voice was filled with mockery. Below this house is the entrance to the human world from hell. That rotten body placed the magic mirror in hell and waited for the Buddha's light to shine. Although the method is stupid, it's not easy to find it in hell. Then let's go to hell. Hellion Vivian chuckled. She could only hear the unique adjectives that His Highness used. It was either a rotten lotus flower or a rotten body. It seemed that he really cared about it. Belagaju glanced at her and reached over with one hand to lift her face. What are you laughing at? Nothing, let's go. Hellion Vivian led him over. She knew very well that this was the time to caress him. According to the little king of hell, the current Belagaju should be more powerful than when he was the demon king. Similarly, his desire to control was stronger than before. The way His Highness expressed his love was always different from others. This was really, Hellion Vivian did not know what to do with this man. She simply held his hand so that he would not think of anything else. Okay. Bailey Jiaoju seemed to enjoy the fact that she took the initiative to hold his hand. He smiled, his bright eyes and white teeth shining brightly. I haven't been to hell for a long time. Compared to the outskirts of the city, the monsters there are much bigger and more. Hellion Wei was speechless. What's with this expectant tone? Soon, Hellion Vivian knew what His Highness was looking forward to. Hell was different from what Hellion Vivian had imagined. She thought it must be a bottomless darkness. Unexpectedly, it was a different kind of beauty. The endless desert followed the arrival of darkness. As the fog spread, the pure white column rose from the ground. It was solemn and elegant, yet cold and desolate. It danced through the sand and clouds. Everything seemed to carry a sacred mark. Belagaju stood there, his long black cloak hanging down to the ground. The strong wind was like a dancing demon, sweeping through the bustling and desolation, lifting his black cloak. Behind him was the setting sun. At this moment, it was as if the entire world was dyed in the color of blood. This was truly the moment of encountering the devil. The serene palace seemed to have a history of thousands of years. It was as tall as the clouds and bustling with life. In front of the palace, there were blooming spider lilies and flames in the sky. The giant carved stone railings had traces of a battle and a white web woven by spiders. It extended to the end of the line of sight until it reached the iron gate. It was replaced by two large stone statues. The stone statues had handsome faces, as if they were gods. Hellion Vivian didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that the stone statues looked a little like His Highness. Coming down from the meeting hall, they could indeed see the magic mirror. But to reach the location of the magic mirror, they had to go to the top of the palace. The temple was like a gathering place for demons. There were dozens of demons crawling on every floor. They were all staring at them with blood-red eyes. Hellion Vivian studied them. They seemed to be unable to move, as if they were tied by something. As long as they were touched, these monsters wouldn't attack. Thinking of this, she looked at the iron gate of the palace. There was a talisman on it. Was it this? Was it the one that suppressed them? Belagaju walked over slowly. He put his index and middle fingers together and tapped lightly. Creak, the yellow talisman fell to the ground. The huge iron gate seemed to have sensed something. A corner of the gate was lifted under the blood-red twilight. Countless black crows flew out from the temple, and clusters of black feathers fell lightly to the ground. The monsters were in an uproar. Bang! A figure in a white immortal robe landed in front of Hellion Vivian. He seemed to be over 100 years old. His beard was white and long, but the aura around him couldn't be ignored. Especially when he landed, the soles of his shoes sank 3 inches into the marble table. It was as simple as passing through a ball of cotton. It was obvious that this old man wasn't easy to deal with. I was wondering who was so bold to come to hell. So it's a 1,000-year-old demon. The old man smiled and looked at Belagaju indifferently, as if he didn't care about him at all. I advise you to go back. As a member of the heavenly Tao, I don't want to kill. Also, I don't want to stain my hands with the dirty blood of demons. Heavenly Tao? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. So the old man standing in front of them was a god. A god that looked after hell? It was no wonder that so many demons would obediently submit themselves to him. It's not certain whose blood will flow out. Bailey Jiaoju laughed, bringing out a never-before-seen demonic nature. Unlike you, I like killing gods very much. Just as he spoke, his black robe fluttered in the air, propping up the barrier behind him that was as deep and transparent as water. The rolling demonic aura in the air was like the howling sea, so vast that it couldn't be detected. The old man sneered. You really don't know what's good for you. All monsters, listen up. This demon is for you. You can eat it however you want. As soon as the old man's voice fell, the monsters that were hovering in the air immediately rose. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, full of demonic nature. Each one of them was dangerous with a bloody mouth. They fiercely pounced on Beligaju. Layer after layer, they almost engulfed him. You overestimate yourselves. The old man had seen many ferocious monsters. No matter how strong a monster was, it couldn't withstand the attacks of so many monsters here. One had to know that each of these monsters was stained with his immortal aura. Tearing a demon to shreds was a piece of cake. However, just as the old man was about to leave in satisfaction, those monsters that were pouncing on him were bounced back heavily. There was a loud bang. Every monster was lying on the ground, their claws clutching their chests. They looked like they were in great pain, curling up their entire bodies. The old man narrowed his eyes and looked behind him. The demon that he thought would be torn to pieces was actually still standing in the same place, safe and sound. Not to mention a scratch on his face, there wasn't even a single wrinkle on his robe. Other than the blood that indicated that he had just attacked, there wasn't a single change on him. Beligaju even had his arm around Hellion Vivian's waist. Under his feet were large enchanting flowers, like a miracle that led to hell, rendering the whole way. Chapter 798. The crisscrossing airflow turned into silence at this moment, and in the silence, the tide receded like white light. The thousands of monsters couldn't help but stop what they were doing at this time. Thousands of years ago, they had also seen this scene. 6 paths of hell, above the blood sea, that person also stood high in the sky, looking down at the boiling black water below, and asked if anyone was willing to follow him to the heavenly path. At that time, it was like now, enchanting flowers bloomed all the way. From then on, there was no sinful blood sea in hell, and thousands of monsters bowed their heads. The heavenly path flourished for a time, and finally became the head of the 6 paths. All of this could only be done by that person. Only the emperor, who was born from chaos and had infinite miracles, could do it. But that emperor had clearly fallen from the heavens. How could he have divine sense? The old man looked at Beligaju, his brown eyes slowly widening, as if he had seen something inconceivable. For the first time in his life, his sleepy eyes were filled with strong surprise. He opened his pale thin lips, wanting to speak, but found that his throat was so dry that he couldn't make a sound. No. This is absolutely impossible. This is just an illusion created by a demon. A fallen person will never be able to recover their consciousness. The old man took a deep breath and looked coldly at Beligaju. Even if you are him, everything in front of you is just a bluff. Do you think I will be afraid of you? As the old man spoke, his eyes narrowed, and the gas in his palm began to condense, shaking the surroundings. He quickly swept towards Beligaju. That movement was not something an ordinary person could do. Before he could even blink, his hand was only a few centimeters away from Beligaju's Qianling point. However, just as he was confident that he could break this person's head, there was a bang, the sound of stone breaking. He didn't understand how he was bounced back, and when he fell heavily to the ground, he only felt that his internal organs were in pain. The dark black petals rose and fell. Everything seemed to be in slow motion as if magic had been cast on it. He really used divine sense. He had used the divine sense that shouldn't have existed. The old man slowly raised his brown eyes, and said weakly, "Impossible. You've already fallen. How could a fallen person have a guardhood? This is impossible." Hair. His deep and magnetic laughter was like golden sand that slowly flowed past, outlining the cold and aloof Jingui. With me here, nothing is impossible. It's just that I don't want to return to the way of heaven. Beligaju looked down at his feet with a smile that was not a smile, and gave old man Tiandao a thought-provoking answer. His body was already covered in blood, but it did not affect his temperament at all. His chiseled face was pale like crystal, and he looked extremely evil. Could it be that you have never lost your mind? The old man's eyes widened, but before he could finish his words, the black feathers that covered the sky and earth pierced through his hands and throat. The blood seeped into the desert and warmed the earth. Beligaju didn't care at all as he walked over. The thousands of demons retreated, and the scene was bright and spectacular. The demons covered their claws in the palace and didn't dare to take another step forward. They stiffly moved their shells, afraid that the man would take their lives with a single movement. They trembled as they called out, "Emperor." Beligaju stood in the middle and coldly said, "Scram." The demons immediately gave up their original spot and desperately curled themselves into a ball. They followed His Highness' orders and slowly rolled backwards. The sadness in their hearts was like a river flowing backwards. Why didn't anyone tell them before? How could Emperor return here? Didn't they say that a fallen person could no longer become a god? What a joke! No matter how thick their skin was, they couldn't withstand such a merciless attack. These demons seem to know you. When Hellion Vivian turned to look at Beligaju, there was a smile in her eyes. After all, the scene of these incomparably strong demons trembling into a ball was a bit too funny. Beligaju walked forward with his long legs and raised an eyebrow. I've seen them once, but I'm not familiar with them. The demons. Who was the one who brought them to the heavenly Tao and beat them for 500 years, and now he's saying that he's not familiar with them? They seem to have something to say to you. Hellion Vivian held back her laughter. Beligaju glanced at them from the side. The demons, they curled themselves up into a ball again, continue to roll. They have nothing to say now. Beligaju reached out and carried Hellion Vivian up. Hellion Vivian rubbed her forehead helplessly. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His Highness was really domineering in certain aspects. The black crow feathers fell, but Beligaju didn't stop. His slender figure flashed and landed in front of the demonic mirror that was suspended in mid-air. He said in a mocking voice, "Is this the mirror that can reflect the 6 paths of reincarnation?" Hellion Vivian seemed to have seen something in the mirror, and she couldn't help but reach out her hand. In an instant, she felt the world spin, and even her perception disappeared. Therefore, she didn't know that the scene in the demonic mirror was the scene of Mount Meru 1,000 years ago. Thousands of miles of Buddhist land, boundless lotus flowers. On Mount Meru, the glazed path, the 9 heavenly steps winding down, hidden in the clouds. Buddhism had invited the heavenly Tao to a banquet to celebrate the end of the blood sea in hell. Originally, this matter was supposed to be left to Buddhism. After all, it was more appropriate to leave the task of delivering all living beings to Buddhism. However, it was said that the only killer in Buddhism, Phoenix, was injured when she went to the demon world to subdue demons. Although the demon world was stable, it was not suitable for her to clear the sea of blood. In this case, the task of clearing the sea of blood could only be left to the heavenly axiom. I heard that the Emperor went personally. This time, the heavenly axiom is going to be more powerful than Buddhism. As long as the Emperor is around, the heavenly axiom will always be the most powerful, right? Phoenix is also very powerful. For the past few hundred years, Buddhism has had the upper hand in many things with her around. So the reason why the Emperor came to Buddhism this time is because he can't stand her, right? I guess both of them can't stand each other. The last time the heavenly axiom invited Buddhism, both of them didn't show up. This is too disrespectful to both sides. But I heard that Phoenix has to recite scriptures, and the Emperor is also too lazy to go out. This is just an excuse. The Emperor has always liked women who are gentle and soft. I guess he found an excuse to not show up because Phoenix is too tough. These two have never met face to face for hundreds of years. This time, the banquet is going to be interesting. The nagging voice faded away with the clouds. No one noticed that under the 2 swaying trees, A figure lying down took away the scripture covering his face and laughed softly. How valiant am I that I can force people not to attend the banquet. Chapter 799. After rubbing her head, Phoenix sat up cross-legged. Her blood-stained kasaya was dragging on the ground like flowing water, and her soft black hair was hanging by her side. When she got up, a faint sandalwood fragrance wafted out from her body. A small monk stood in front of her and said hesitantly, "Lady Phoenix, you are indeed very valiant. That's why you should restrain yourself and attend the banquet. Don't let these messy rumors spread. Most importantly, if you don't attend the banquet, you are not giving face to the heavenly Tao. If you don't give face to the heavenly Tao, the Buddha will punish you by chanting scriptures. Do you think you are made for chanting scriptures? Every time you chant scriptures, you will drag a group of small monks over to listen. Can't you consider their ears? They are going to become Buddhas. Become Buddhas. Become Buddhas. Important things need to be said 3 times. If you want me to attend the banquet, that's fine." Phoenix looked at the small person in front of her who looked calm on the surface but was roaring on the inside. She smiled and said, "Reduce my confinement by 2 days." The small monk shook his head and said, "The Buddha said that you will be confined for as long as you want. I hate being restrained the most." Phoenix's voice turned cold. The little monk chanted Amitabha and said, "That's why the Buddha said to keep a close watch on you. You didn't say who you met in the demon realm and why you were injured. The Buddha naturally had to lock you up for 3 days. It was only 3 days, but you asked for 2 days less. That's too greedy of you," the Buddha said. Phoenix stood up and fiddled with her long hair and said, "You do have the potential to become a Buddha." The small monk opened his eyes wide in surprise and said, "Really? Of course it's true. You talk so much, it's a pity that you don't chant scriptures." Phoenix reached out and touched the small monk's bald head. "All right, I'm going to attend the banquet. First, bring me the sacred water I got from the heavenly Tao." The small monk was also very cute. He nodded and asked, "Lady, are you going to water it again? It's a pity to give the sacred water to a body tree. I heard that the sacred water of the heavenly Tao should be used to irrigate the golden lotus. The body tree can live without water. Oh right, I also heard that yesterday, the golden lotus transformed into a human and became a Buddha. She's very beautiful. She's going to attend the banquet today. So, Buddhism wants to use a honey trap on a certain emperor?" Phoenix put her hands behind her head and smiled lazily. It was none of her business. The little monk walked behind it and said, "You can't say that. Eularo said that this is called love in the mortal world. It's very, very beautiful. In the future, tell Eularo that in the human world, this is called a blind date." Phoenix took the godly water from the small monk's hand and gently smiled. "Just call the man and woman together for a meal. If they find each other pleasing to the eye, they can enter the bridal chamber. Understand?" The small monk was confused. That. All right, stop it. You're still young. It's not suitable for you to go on blind dates." However, Phoenix would never have thought that there was such an old saying, "The mantis stalks the cicada," unaware of the oriole behind. She heard someone else's words. Naturally, someone else would hear her too. "Emperor." The young novice monk who led the way smiled awkwardly. He had always known Lord Phoenix's temperament. Her words were blunt, but most of the time, she would not see anyone. Hence, there had never been any trouble. "Now." The little monk raised his head and looked at the emperor, who had a faint smile on his face. He hurriedly explained, "Emperor, please don't misunderstand." "Misunderstand?" The man opened his mouth. His white robe spread out like 1,000 layers of petals. His hair fell on his robe like a waterfall, like a lotus flower silently blooming on the surface of the water at night. "What do you mean by misunderstand? Does Buddhism intend to give a woman to me? Or is it a blind date?" The little monk was at a loss for words. He did not want to hear the word blind date ever again. "Let's go. I'm very curious about what you Buddhists will say at the banquet." The man laughed again. The smell of blood from the 6 paths of hell could still be smelled from him. The little monk didn't dare to say anything. He could only watch as the millions of light specks swam and danced behind the man's back, transforming into endless towering glacier in the void. He felt as if something was about to collapse at this moment. No one had ever been able to use the divine sense in the Buddhist way. It was a great disrespect to the conversion of all Buddhas. After you, Emperor. The little monk lowered his head and wiped the sweat on his forehead with his long sleeve. He was thinking about what to do when the two of them met at the banquet. One represented Tian Dao, and the other represented Buddhism. They had never gotten along peacefully. If they fought as soon as they met, the little monk did not dare to imagine the scene. He only walked forward quietly. He could not help but look back at the Bodhi tree. Phoenix was still watering. Her hands had once saved thousands of resentful spirits and killed countless demons before she became a Buddha. Therefore, the other Buddhists did not talk much to Phoenix, but they also did not talk about her. After all, at least in Buddhism, no one dared to face her directly. Phoenix had been like this since she was young. She did not have a monk friend. Every day, she would kneel in front of the Buddha and pray. When she was not in Buddhism, she was usually very quiet. Other than talking to the little monks, she would occasionally sit under the Bodhi tree and pray while watering. Just like what others said, the mythical water was wasted in places where it should not be wasted. When little Phoenix heard this, she smiled while holding the Bodhi tree. Who said it was a waste? No matter how beautiful the golden lotus is, there are countless of them. There is only one Bodhi tree on this mountain, and that is Jing Wushuang. Therefore, the Bodhi tree had a name, Jing Wushuang. It was also from then on that little Phoenix began her journey of watering the Bodhi tree. Phoenix had grown up, but the Bodhi tree had not yet transformed into a human. It did not even have 6 senses. Lord Phoenix, I heard from the Venerable that the Bodhi tree cannot transform into a human. The little monk reached out his small hand to help Phoenix hold the porcelain bottle. It is the same no matter how much mythical water you pour on it. Phoenix smiled and straightened her body. It is not that he cannot transform into a human, but he has always been helping people become Buddhas. This is a great merit, do you understand? Wait a minute, Lord Phoenix, did you comprehend this? The little monk widened his eyes like a small animal. Phoenix raised her eyebrows. Anyway, my Wushuang will become a human and a Buddha one day. The mythical water was originally mine, so it is up to me whether it is wasted or not. If others want to take it, let them fight with the heavenly axiom. If they win, they will have it. This is too overbearing. Not everyone likes to fight so much, right? The little monk held the Buddhist scriptures and trotted behind Phoenix. Lord Phoenix, you must be quiet during the banquet, okay? Don't fight with the Emperor, okay? We are people who pray to Buddha, so we can't be too violent. Also, this time, the Emperor is here for the blind date, I know. When the time comes, I will be a wallflower at the side. However, I can't guarantee that I won't fight back if he wants to hit me. After saying that, Phoenix continued to walk toward the boundless sea of clouds. Chapter 800. The little monk knew that no matter what he said, Lord Phoenix would not listen to him. It seemed that he could only set up more vegetarian dishes for Lord Phoenix during the Buddhist feast. As long as there was food, Lord Phoenix would not be so fierce. Therefore, on this day, the vegetarian dishes in front of Phoenix's table changed from 2 to 8, and there was also a plate of immortal peaches as a bonus. Just like that, the feast began, and thousands of Buddhist lights shone. The top and bottom of Mount Meru were full of flowers. It was as if a path was specially paved for someone. In the Hall of Great Strength, whispers sounded from all directions in the void. The topic of discussion was none other than the Emperor sitting in the seat of honor. Elegant, ascetic, handsome. Then, there was such an emperor, and there were actually a dense number of demons hibernating behind him. Right at the Buddhist feast, they emitted a strong demonic aura that made people shudder. Were they here for a meal? They were clearly here to cause trouble. Did they think that they were monks who did not know the ways of the world? They knew that too, okay? This was the Hall of Great Strength, the holy land of Buddhism. When had there been demons? However, the emperor praised them as soon as he entered the door. That's right, it was praise. The specific way of praise was as follows. I have always admired all of you for having the 6 paths in your hearts and delivering all living beings from torment. At that time, they also very politely said Amitabha, this is what Buddhist cultivators should do. However, they did not expect the man's next sentence at all. Since that's the case, it shouldn't be a problem for me to bring them here for a meal, right? As soon as he finished speaking, a group of demons appeared behind him. Dark evil swept over from between heaven and earth. The man smiled slightly and continued to add, after all, they are also creatures within the 6 paths. What else could they say? They could only swallow the bitterness into their stomachs. This emperor was too shameless, okay? He did not give them any room to refuse at all. Venerable, Lord Phoenix is here. The little novice monk lowered his voice and reminded his master. After all, in such an atmosphere, speaking up required courage. The venerable one fiddled with the prayer beads in his hand. He raised one hand and chanted, Amitabha, please invite Phoenix in. Yes. The young novice monk retreated. Not long after, a person walked over from the cloud stairs. His black hair reached his ankles, and every step he took was like a lotus flower. Unlike the other Buddhas, in addition to the snow-white kasaya, Phoenix also wore a blood-red fur cloak. The light of Buddha made her clothes and long hair flutter forward like a meteor breaking through the sky. Just by standing there, she could occupy the entire sky with the light of Buddha. The man sitting at the top of the hall watched this scene. He rested his chin on his slender fingers and casually changed his sitting position. As soon as Phoenix entered, she felt that something was wrong. When he raised his head to look at the seat of honor, he realized where the lingering smell of blood came from. She had seen many ferocious and evil monsters. However, there were not many who dared to appear in Mountain Tenya. It was even rarer to see a man who dared to sit in front of these monsters. She could not see the man's face clearly in the light of Buddha. However, this did not affect her desire to fight. Phoenix tilted her head and smiled. Before the crowd could react, the prayer beads wrapped around her slender wrist turned into a beautiful scimitar in the light of Buddha. The tip of the scimitar moved forward unstoppably like a shooting star in the light of Buddha. It approached the man sitting at the top of the hall. All the deities and Buddhas, regardless of whether they were from Tian Dao or Buddhism, opened their eyes wide and looked up. Emperor. Emperor? Phoenix frowned. The tip of the scimitar stopped 5 centimeters away from the man's chest. The man was not embarrassed by the threat of the scimitar. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her with his long legs slightly crossed. He did not have any intention of dodging. Instead, it was as if he did not care about her attack at all. There was no change in his beautiful eyes. Just as Phoenix was considering whether to take back the scimitar or not. Clang! A deafening sound was heard. The scimitar was cut into 2 and turned into light spots, falling from the clouds little by little. At that moment, the upstanding chi was released. All the Buddhas were shocked. Phoenix's scimitar was transformed from prayer beads. It was not something that could be broken easily. This emperor was too. Sorry, I did not control my strength. The man's voice did not sound embarrassed at all. I just did not expect Buddhists to greet each other like this. Using a scimitar. Speaking of this, the man even smiled. In the light of Buddha, no one could see this fleeting smile. It was indescribably graceful and noble. However, the hand that reached out and pressed on Hellion Vivian's back was strong and powerful. It carried a strong smell of rust and blood. He looked at Phoenix. His chiseled face was extremely handsome, but his eyes were flashing with indifference. The spacious hall was silent for a moment. No one made a sound, and no one moved. Little Monk, who followed behind Phoenix in a hurry, looked at this scene in a daze. He pressed his little bald head and felt a headache coming on. He had sinned, he did not stop Lord. Did his lordship hate the emperor so much? He did not even say a word and directly started a fight. Your Excellency, you're too intolerant. Just because the other party thinks that you are tough and more powerful than you have to hurt him. A monk cannot be like this. Amitabha. It was undeniable that Little Monk had really misunderstood Phoenix this time. Phoenix took action because of the overwhelming demons. She was used to killing demons, so her first reaction was to draw her scimitar. Who would have thought that he was the one who brought the demons into Buddhism? That's right, Phoenix actually knew this emperor. It was just that the light was too bright and she did not see clearly. The outside world said that they did not get along for so many years. In fact, they had never really fought. They had only met once or twice, and they were all far away. Except for the last time, when she went to capture demons, he happened to be there. The best thing about Tian Dao compared to Buddhism was that they could go out and have fun. However, she did not know if she had ruined something good for him, so her arm was cut by a scimitar. He did not recognize her at that time. When the moonlight shone, he raised his eyebrows. "It's you?" His tone was as if he had been caught having an affair. What was going on? However, she did not say much to him. They were just nodding acquaintances, and it was just an accident. She nodded and caught the demons that she wanted to capture and returned to Buddhism. Then, it was this encounter. He seemed to be even more unfriendly than her. Phoenix smiled. It did not matter, because she did not like him that much either. Chapter 801. After retracting her hand, Phoenix waved her wide sleeves, and the broken scimitar appeared in her palm again. Then, it transformed into Buddhist prayer beads and wrapped around her wrist again. Seeing that she did not intend to continue fighting, little monk breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he heard her smile and raised the corner of her eyes. "I didn't expect that the people from Tian Dao would bring a group of demons to Buddhism for a banquet. Is Tian Dao short of money now?" Hearing this, the man's indifferent eyes looked up and met with Phoenix's eyes. Their eyes were the same, nothing more than that. All the gods and Buddhas seemed to be able to hear the crackling sound of the fire. The venerable coughed softly. Little monk hurried forward and pulled the corner of Phoenix's robe. "My lord, you will be grounded. You don't want to be grounded again, right?" Phoenix lowered her head and looked at the little one. She touched the child's head and laughed. "Where's my vegetarian meal?" "It's already been prepared." Little monk lowered his voice. "The table with the most vegetarian plates is yours." As if he was afraid that the emperor would hear him, he put all his strength on his fingers. Phoenix raised her eyebrows. "Okay, I know. Eat more and don't fight, right? Bring me there." Seeing Phoenix walking to his seat, the venerable Inakasaya said, "Phoenix will react like this every time she sees a demon. The emperor is frightened." The man curved his thin lips and smiled deeply. "It's indeed a beautiful blade. It's a pity to keep it in Buddhism." "Amitabha, is the emperor talking about that scimitar?" The venerable smiled. "If the emperor wants it, he can take a string of Buddhist prayer beads back. After practicing for 100 days, he can turn it into a blade." The man retracted his gaze and smiled more gently. His eyes seemed to be able to reflect the shadows of the demons behind him. "You don't have to be so polite, venerable. I'm not talking about the blade." "Not the blade? What was that?" The venerable frowned slightly and did not continue on this topic. He faced the deities and Buddhas and said, "The clearing of the blood sea is not only a blessing for Buddhism, but also for the samsara. Yesterday, the golden lotus was able to turn into a human and become a Buddha. It was also because of the emperor that the golden lotus was able to express her gratitude by reciting the Buddhist scriptures for 100 days to spread the good news of the world." As the venerable one spoke, the clouds churned and the woman who had become a Buddha walked over. Her long white kasaya robe was like a blooming lotus flower, emitting a faint fragrance. The woman smiled with a bashful look on her face as she chanted, "Emperor. So this is the golden lotus. It was raised in front of the Buddha. It is indeed extraordinary. It's just that his cultivation is too low, and his Buddhist position is also a little low. You can't compare things like that." Golden Lotus was born in Buddhism. Because she was influenced by the Sanskrit, she transformed into a human. The rest of the people were only Buddhas after going through the hardships of the human world. They weren't pure enough. Don't you know that the emperor likes pure people? According to this, Phoenix also grew up in Buddhism. When she was born, 33 rays of Buddha's aura descended to hell. It was the true Buddha who carried her into Buddhism. Although she didn't become a Buddha immediately, she was purer than anyone else. She is pure, but she is the number one in Buddhism. This time, The Venerable One wants to appease the heavenly axiom by sending the golden lotus out. Is he going to send Phoenix to appease the heavenly axiom? That's true. Who in Buddhism is better than Phoenix's Buddhist position? Even though the Buddhist position was obtained by killing countless demons, it was still unbeatable. When Phoenix had something to eat, she would usually be quieter. She was not very interested in blind dates. However, Little Monk, who was at the side, would occasionally give her a signal with his eyes. He was trying to tell her not to fight with the Emperor. In fact, Phoenix felt that she did not have any particularly big conflicts with someone. Although someone did not like her, she did not like him either. But had they ever been unfriendly? Phoenix carefully recalled her meeting with someone. Due to the distance between them, that person's elegance was innate. Didn't she always nod and greet him? Why did others think that she would definitely fight? The little monk heard Phoenix's question and chuckled. He said, "My lord, don't be so hypocritical. You almost stabbed the Emperor just now. Also, you used to say that you would greet him from a distance. It was very cold. How can a nod of your chin be considered a greeting? I learned all that from him." Phoenix ate a piece of chestnut cake and chewed it. Her eyes were full of smiles and she looked indifferent. "I greeted him the same way he greeted me." The little monk looked at her left and right. Yes, the Emperor does nod to everyone he sees. However, when it's done by the Emperor, it's very special. When it's done by you, it's very provocative. It depends on your temperament. Do you understand? I think I have a good temperament. Don't many people from the heavenly axiom propose to me? Phoenix put down her wooden chopsticks. She wanted to compete with her own appearance. The little monk chuckled again. That's because the heavenly axiom needs you to fight for them. Okay, I understand, Phoenix smiled evilly. It's the same reason why Buddhism wants to win over the Emperor. The little monk nodded and held his wooden fish with his small hands. Anyway, my lord, you have to behave yourself today. Besides, it's useless for the heavenly axiom to propose to you. My lord's love is used to save the world. Buddhism wants me to save the world. Phoenix repeated this sentence. Her eyes turned cold. That's a good choice. The little monk didn't understand why Phoenix suddenly stood up. My lord, where are you going? I've completed my mission. I'm going to water the plants and recite scriptures. Phoenix moved her hand and the scimitar appeared in her palm. No one would stop her. No one dared to stop her. In the hearts of the Buddhas, killing was always bad. Therefore, the Kang Mountains and Urhai were so vast. In Buddhism, there would always be such a figure, straight and lonely. When she said that she was going to recite scriptures, Phoenix would really sit under the Bodhi tree and recite scriptures. However, her posture was always lazy. She would say something to the Bodhi tree every time she turned a page. You're the only one who can always be with me. I was injured in the demon world this time. However, the demon world is quite interesting. I can even see mermaids. It's just that I can't stay there for too long. I'll be grounded. I feel like my hands are locked. It's a terrible feeling. However, it's worth it if I can transform you into a human. As she spoke, Phoenix fell asleep. Her white robe and black hair were enough to fill the air like flowers when spread out. As if there was a breeze, the Bodhi tree that hadn't moved for thousands of years swayed comfortably. It turned out that year, the Bodhi tree felt something because she wanted to comfort him. To comfort the lonely you in the 3,000 worlds. Chapter 802. Others did not know what Phoenix was thinking. They firmly believed that the Emperor of Tian Dao and Phoenix of Buddhism would definitely become enemies this time. Therefore, in order to prevent both of them from meeting, little Shami would always take another route when he led the Emperor into the Hall of Great Strength. Buddhism's intention was not entirely to create an opportunity for the Emperor and Golden Lotus to meet. Originally, clearing the sea of blood would cause even the Buddhists to be tainted with evil spirits. Moreover, the Tian Dao's people had to chant sutras for a few days. The Emperor was cooperative, but every time he came, he was surrounded by a dense black fog. During that time, the Buddhists did not have a moment of peace. Phoenix did not need to go to the demon world to kill. She just leaned under the body tree, raised her eyebrows and looked at the black fog. She turned her head and continued to sleep. Little Monk was in charge of delivering vegetarian food to Phoenix. Originally, he could go back and chant sutras after delivering the food. However, this time he saw Golden Lotus chanting sutras for the Emperor. The Emperor looked like he did not hear what Golden Lotus was saying at all. There was no one in his eyes. He stood there elegantly and threw the lotus seeds with one hand. Those demons came over to eat. They even arranged themselves in the shape of goldfish with watery eyes. At that moment, Little Monk felt that there was no need to chant sutras to get rid of evil spirits. The Emperor could totally tame these demons successfully. They were being fed like goldfish. How could there be such a miserable demon? Little Monk found it more and more interesting. He put down the bamboo box in his hand, supported his cheeks with his two small hands, and watched with great interest. This was the scene that Phoenix saw when she walked over while rubbing her starving stomach. She only wanted to take the bamboo box. However, all the Buddhists who were chanting sutras stopped when they saw her. Little Shami, who was following behind the Emperor and Golden Lotus, took a deep breath. After the Celestial Emperor finished feeding, he turned around and saw her as well. This was great. Everyone stood up to stop them from making a move. Phoenix took the bamboo box and looked at the dishes inside. She was quite satisfied. She had never been a picky eater, so she naturally wanted to leave after getting the food. The venerable Buddhas were chanting scriptures, but they didn't like her presence. Therefore, she had always chanted the scriptures by herself. Therefore, he had no intention of staying any longer. Are they going to make a move again? All of you, watch out. With Emperor's personality, it's impossible that he won't seek revenge from Phoenix for what happened at the Buddhist feast. I've heard that the Emperor's revenge is usually very vicious. He's more than ruthless. Those who provoke him, be it gods or Buddhas, which one of them ends up well? Phoenix isn't that easy to deal with. It's hard to say who will win. Closer, they're getting closer. The two of them were indeed very close. Only, it was a pity that there was no confrontation of gazes like last time. Sparks flew in all directions, and no one fought with the other. But the atmosphere was very cold. Because no one had any intention of giving way to the other. Suddenly, there was some tit-for-tat. Little Monk tugged at the corner of Phoenix's robe and chuckled. Then, he raised his head and said to Phoenix, "Actually, you're walking to the right because you want to say hello to Emperor, right? Say hello." Phoenix raised her good-looking eyebrows. "Please, Master. Just say yes. Otherwise, I'll be punished." Little Monk's voice was very soft. Phoenix wouldn't reject a child. She retracted her gaze and smiled faintly. Yes, it's a greeting. All the gods and Buddhas were used to the two of them meeting. They were either cold to the point of being arrogant, or they were arrogant to the point of using knives. Greeting. What's going on? Everyone's eyes lit up again and again. They stared at the two of them from all angles to see what they were going to say next. The man turned a blind eye to all of this. Finally, something caught his eye in his indifferent eyes. Even his smile became playful. "Oh, since it's a greeting, you should say something. What do you want to say to me? Say something." Phoenix was stunned for a moment. But her original intention wasn't to greet him. Thinking of this, she glanced at the golden lotus behind the man and instinctively blurted out, "It's nothing. It's just that you're here for the matchmaking banquet again. All the Buddhas. Matchmaking banquet? Matchmaking banquet?" Little Monk lowered his head and cried, "Master, you might as well not say anything. Matchmaking banquet?" The man smiled and slowly bent down. His voice was so low that only she could hear it. "With whom? If it's you, I can consider it. After all, to a certain extent, you really want to be destroyed." Phoenix raised her head and smiled. "It seems that you still want to fight. When I said destroy, I meant another kind." The man's bright eyes fell on her collarbone under her robe. At this moment, there was a touch of real evilness on his handsome face. Phoenix frowned. "Stay away from me. I can't fight these 2 days. If you want to fight, let's fight another day. Are you going to be grounded again?" The man smiled, which was different from his usual self, You're indeed suitable to be locked up. Phoenix felt that someone was particularly talkative today, so she didn't continue the conversation. She was very hungry, so she walked around the Buddhist gate and left. The man seemed to be angry, but also not. He looked like he was smiling, but the stone steps under his feet were broken. Seeing this, the demons all shuddered. Golden Lotus stepped forward with a gentle and beautiful face. Emperor, don't lower yourself to the same level as the Supreme Phoenix. Her temper has always been like this. She can't tolerate people, but she's still kind at heart. The man didn't say anything, but his smile became wider. After a period of time, the demons basically knew this man better than anyone else. Their scalps were numb from that smile, and they couldn't guess what he wanted to do. After he walked away gracefully, black fog lingered outside the 33rd heaven. The man said in a very low voice, "Do you guys think we should catch and lock her up?" Ha! The demons thought that the man was talking about Golden Lotus. There's no need. After the Emperor's wedding, Golden Lotus will belong to the Emperor. The man paused in his steps and was very confused. Golden Lotus? Yes. The demons started to act like goldfish again. They were very, very obedient. At this moment, the man threw a bomb at them. I'm not talking about her. I always want the best. The Supreme Envoy, the Wisdom King Phoenix. Foam, foam, Phoenix. Cough, cough, cough. The demons were choked by the lotus seeds. Emperor, this shouldn't be possible. The man stretched out his hand and pulled one of the demons over. Why would I care if it's possible or not? However, I'm not interested in marrying anyone. I'm just thinking about what it would be like to lock this person up. That scene would definitely be very beautiful. The first reaction of all the demons was that the Emperor was crazy. Their second reaction was that this man had never failed in what he wanted to do. Chapter 803. From that day onwards, little Shami was even more afraid that they would meet each other. He tried his best to prevent them from appearing in Buddhism at the same time. Just like that, everyone in the six paths, be it deities or Buddhas, basically knew about the conflict between Phoenix and the Emperor. All of them cooperated with little Shami and tried their best to prevent them from meeting each other. Tai-Bai Heavenly Immortal shook his head and said with a smile, these two people didn't have such a big conflict in the past. Although they didn't like each other, they still nodded to each other when they met. Why are they so incompatible now? Sure enough, a mountain can't accommodate two tigers. You should know that the Emperor doesn't like women who are too tough. Now that he has chosen the deities and Buddhas, which one of them isn't beautiful and clean? Plus, this Phoenix is too strong. It's only a matter of time before they become hostile. If you ask me, I think it's time for the Emperor to settle down. Whether it's the Golden Lotus of Buddhism or the Snow Goddess of Tian Dao, they're both not bad. Speaking of this, there's also one in the Dragon Palace. She's so beautiful, I've been wanting to talk to the Emperor for a long time. Wait, I have a fairy from Mount Mortsang here. She's been admiring the Emperor for a long time. Other than her looks, she's also very talented. She's the perfect match for the Emperor. The exalted immortals of the heavenly Tao were so noisy that the entire dome was shaking. The man sitting on the seat of honor had no intention of speaking. He crossed his legs calmly, but there was something he was curious about. Fishes. This was the name that the Emperor had just given to the demons. The demons immediately formed the shape of a goldfish. Go ahead. My beautiful prey, and I don't seem to be on good terms. The man raised his eyebrows, as if he was really confused. The demons collectively felt helpless. They roared in their hearts, everyone in the six paths knows that you're enemies. What do you mean by don't seem to be on good terms? When have you ever met each other? If we didn't follow you, we would also think that every time you met Phoenix, you would want to cripple her. It was only because she was a Buddhist that you couldn't do it. Of course, we already know that you don't care about other people's feelings, but we never thought that you have such dirty thoughts about Phoenix. What? Is it difficult to answer my question? The man chuckled as he looked at them. The demons had a hard time disguising themselves as goldfish, so they didn't dare to move at all. They tried their best to speak in a calm tone. There is indeed something a little off. Oh! The man smiled again. His smile was so profound that the demons couldn't figure out what he wanted to do. In fact, what the man had to do was very simple. Since everyone felt that they were not on the same page, then he had to subvert their understanding. It would also prevent these people from bothering him with who he was meeting today and who he was meeting tomorrow. A certain emperor glanced at the portrait on the table again, his eyes faintly showing impatience. However, that impatience was well concealed by him. On the second day, when he was going to Buddhism, the little monk wanted to lead him up the mountain, but he changed his route. The little monk panicked when he saw this. He ran all the way behind the man. The emperor's route is really not that smooth. Please wait. It was indeed not smooth. After all, there wasn't any route where one would see the betrothal gifts of a proposal halfway through the journey. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count. There was a little monk standing opposite the betrothal gifts. The little monk felt that he was too short, so he tried to tiptoe and said to the Son of God of Tianshan Mountain, "Son of God, please go back. Our Lord still has to recite scriptures, so she won't accept your betrothal gifts. Little Master, please go back and report that if Phoenix agrees to marry, Tianshan Mountain will give her the same treatment that she received in Buddhism. I believe that Lord Phoenix will make the right choice. After all, she's not young anymore," the Son of God of Tianshan Mountain said in a firm tone. He looked at the matchmaker Golden Lotus leisurely. Golden Lotus laughed and said in a gentle voice, "Yes, little master, please go back and talk to the Lord again. The Son of God is elegant, and it's really good. The most important thing is that the Son of God has a good temper, both of them are compatible." But the little monk opened his mouth. He was interrupted by a lazy yawn. "You don't have to say any more, I've made the right choice." It was Phoenix. She walked over barefooted with a scripture in her hand. She met the Son of God of Tianshan Mountain's stunned gaze with a smile and continued, "Son of God, please take your betrothal gifts and leave immediately, do you understand?" You. The Son of God of Tianshan Mountain really liked the looks of the woman in front of him. However, he wanted to hit her as soon as she spoke. Unfortunately, he was no match for Phoenix, so he could only attack her with words. "It seems that I've come to the wrong place this time. The rumors are true, a Buddha doesn't look like a Buddha. No matter how beautiful she is, she's just a facade." As he spoke, the Son of God of Tianshan Mountain turned around and wanted to leave. However, he did not expect to bump into the Emperor when he turned around. "Emperor? Why are you here?" Recently, the Heavenly Axiom had become the leader of the Six Tao, and the Emperor of the Heavenly Axiom was someone that everyone wanted to curry favor with. The Son of God of Tianshan Mountain was no exception. The Emperor raised his eyebrows and said in a dangerous tone, "Why? Can't I come?" No. Of course you can come." The Son of God of Tianshan Mountain was very friendly. "You must be here for Golden Lotus. Look at my memory, how could I forget about this?" The man did not say anything. He only looked at the Son of God with a smile, but there was no smile in his eyes. At first, the Son of God of Tianshan Mountain did not notice it. However, after being stared at for a long time, he felt a little uneasy. He moved uneasily and asked, "Emperor, is there anything on my face?" "No." The man smiled and said with a wicked smile, "I'm just curious. Why do you have the courage to come out when you're so ugly?" The Son of God of Tianshan Mountain was stunned. He opened his mouth but did not know how to refute. However, don't worry. You'll never need to use the words "only looks good in your life." The man patted the Son of God of Tianshan Mountain's shoulder and said in a gentle tone, "Because you don't deserve it." Hearing this, the little acolytes could not hold it in anymore. They looked at the Son of God of Tianshan Mountain's face and burst into laughter. The Son of God of Tianshan Mountain's face turned green as if he had swallowed a toad. It was a horrible sight. He finally knew why he could not afford to offend the Emperor. He covered his face and ran down the mountain path awkwardly. However, he did not understand how he had offended the Emperor. Chapter 804. Seeing that the god of Tianshan Mountain had left, little monk felt rather melancholy. What about his betrothal gifts? If the Venerable One saw them, she would be grounded again. Betrothal gifts? Phoenix laughed, "That's easy. Keep the valuable ones and throw away the worthless ones. Little monk opened his mouth. Keep them? But what if the god of Tianshan Mountain comes again? And the venerable one? Remember, this is not a betrothal gift. It's the incense money donated by Tianshan Mountain to Lei Yin Temple. Phoenix played with a string of jewelry. Tianshan Mountain won't be so stingy, right? Do we still have to take back the donated items? Little monk nodded, although the solution suggested by the venerable one was not bad. But why did it feel like a robbery? Wasn't the god of Tianshan Mountain here to send the betrothal gifts? Now, not only did the god of Tianshan Mountain lose his face, he could not even take back the betrothal gifts. He could have provoked anyone, but he had to provoke the venerable one. But why was the emperor still here? Phoenix had the same thought as Little Monk. She raised her eyebrows and looked at the man standing in front of her. What's the matter? The man's voice was very faint, and he did not hold back. Ask your little monk to pour me a cup of tea. I'm not used to standing outside and talking. Phoenix was stunned when she heard this. Was he really looking for her for something? I don't have tea here. Phoenix did not have any deities here, so of course, she would not prepare tea leaves or spring water. Little monk heard his venerable one's words and immediately reached out to pull Phoenix's clothes. Phoenix looked at him, wondering what was going on. Little monk chuckled and tried to smooth things over. Since venerable one Phoenix doesn't have tea leaves here, Emperor, why don't we go somewhere else? As long as you don't fight, everything is fine. He even suspected that the emperor said that he wanted to drink tea just to provoke Phoenix. The man did not pay attention to Little Monk's words. He stopped in his tracks, turned around and walked toward Phoenix. His tall and straight figure was lowered, and his long arms were behind her back. His aura was very strong, and there was something dangerous about him for no reason. No tea? It's over, it's over. They're definitely going to fight this time. Not only the little monk, but even the little monk was so anxious that his forehead was sweating. Yes, Phoenix said with a smile, but there's wine. I brought it from the demon world last time. Do you want to drink? Sure. The man looked at her and smiled. He retracted his hand and tidied up his robe. Lead the way. That was it. The little monk and the little monk looked at each other. Wow, they actually didn't fight. Furthermore, he wanted to stay and drink. Drinking in Buddhism? If this wasn't disrespect, then what was? Golden Lotus was still standing there, and the faint smile on her face gradually faded. She originally thought that if she introduced someone to Phoenix, Phoenix would agree. After all, the condition of the god of Tianshan Mountain was not bad. Now it seemed that she had underestimated her. As expected of the almighty Lord Phoenix. The little monk sensed Jinlian's gaze. Lady Buddha, today you. I won't be chanting scriptures for the emperor today, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Golden Lotus smiled gently. The heavenly axiom has asked me to go there often, but the two of you should stay by the side of the Phoenix Emperor, don't let them get into a conflict. The little monk chanted Amitabha and watched Golden Lotus leave. After that, he quickly ran towards the direction of the sacred land. He was afraid that the two of them would not come to an agreement and start a fight. It was undeniable that these people were overthinking. Phoenix had never drunk with anyone before. Thinking about it carefully, this was the first time someone had come to her place as a guest in hundreds of years. She felt that it was a novelty, so she took out all the wine jugs buried under the ground. Looking at the table, only the wine seemed to be a little monotonous, so she put some peanuts on it. Phoenix lowered her head and peeled the peanuts. After peeling them, she put them on the wooden plate, not caring whether the emperor liked them or not. Anyway, it was fine as long as she was a good host. When the man saw her actions, he raised his eyebrows. You're giving them to me? Yes. Phoenix nodded excitedly. She felt that receiving guests was quite interesting. The man's voice was very faint, but it was indifferent. I don't like to eat things that have been touched by other people's hands. Phoenix pursed her thin lips indifferently. She took the wooden plate and continued to peel the peanuts. However, this time, she put all the peanuts she peeled into her mouth. Why are you looking for me? It was really rare for the two of them to sit together and have a good chat. If this were to spread, everyone would be stunned. It's nothing much. The man played with the colored glass cup in his hand and said in an indifferent voice, I'm here to propose to you. Phoenix did not respond. The little monk and the little monk suddenly stood up. Propose? Who's proposing to whom? I must have misheard. The little monk rushed over with a red face. Emperor, you're joking, right? Phoenix looked at him and thought, why is this child more excited than me? But, what's wrong with this man? Both of you go out first. Phoenix thought for a while and decided to send the little monk and the little monk away first. How could the little monk be willing to leave? What kind of explosive news was this? My lord, please don't. Go out. No one dared to disobey Phoenix's order. The little monk pinched the little monk's clothes. After the two of them went out, they looked at each other. The little monk asked the little monk, do you think this is a new method that Emperor came up with to provoke my lord? Using a proposal to provoke my lord? The little monk felt that his world had been turned upside down. This was definitely a nightmare. The little monk said seriously, I feel that it's more of a joke. I hope so. The little monk decided to keep a close watch on the door. If the two of them were to fight, it would mean that the emperor was serious. If the two of them were to be polite, it would mean that it was a joke. Or maybe it was like what the little monk said. The emperor wanted to provoke my lord to take revenge for the stab in the hall of great strength. No matter what it was, it didn't seem to be a good sign. Amid her, after sending them away, Phoenix lazily lay on her side and supported her head with one hand. She looked at the man and asked, what's the matter with you? The man's eyes followed her movements. His gaze slid down the side of her face, slid past her slender and fair neck, and finally landed on her half-opened cassock. Her exquisite and beautiful collarbone always made people want to break it. I ate a lot at the matchmaking banquet recently. I don't want to eat anymore. The man withdrew his gaze and put down the wine cup. You must be tired of receiving betrothal gifts recently. It doesn't feel good to be confined, right? Phoenix raised her beautiful phoenix eyes. Even if I wanted to find someone to deal with these troubles, why would I look for you? Emperor, you're a big trouble. Chapter 805. Why? The man smiled with indescribable charm, because I'm the only one in the 6 Dao who is prettier than you. Phoenix paused for a moment and realized that she could not refute the man's word. She had to admit that the man was indeed prettier than her. He was a demon who could kill the 6 Dao with his looks alone. He was the only one who could compare his looks with a woman. Let me think about it. Phoenix suddenly thought of something and said, don't you have the golden lotus? The man frowned. Who are you talking about? The golden lotus, the Lady Buddha, Phoenix reminded him. The man continued to frown. I don't remember. Phoenix suddenly felt that what Buddhism had done these days was in vain. The poor venerable was still hoping to win someone over with her beauty. It was like a river of spring water flowing eastward and could not be taken back. I heard that you're raising a body tree. The man said faintly, I'm in charge of the entire Tian Dao's sacred water. You can get it without violating Buddhism's rules in the future. Phoenix looked at the handsome face and suddenly smiled. Sounds like a good idea. But we can't really get married. How long is the time limit? More than 40 days. Emperor Huang put the wineglass to his lips and took a sip. After 40 days, there will be a tough battle between Tian Dao and Buddhism. We'll be separated then. Phoenix ate a peanut. You even leaked such information to me. Well, since you've been in contact with many women, you should know how to get along with them. I don't know. After the matter was finished, the man did not need to continue to stay. He stood up with his long legs. She did not know what he was thinking, but he threw her a roll of ancient paper. But I have the logic that a normal person should have. Look carefully at these regulations. I will come over tomorrow and have a vegetarian meal together. You read the scriptures to me. Phoenix took the roll of ancient paper and flipped through it. She frowned. The daily life of human partners? The first rule was to have a meal together. Are you the one who wrote this? Phoenix was very suspicious. The man brushed the dust off his fingertips and smiled charmingly. I took it from Yu Lao. Oh. This man was the only one who could say the word rob so calmly. Phoenix was very interested in Eularo's things and decided to study the regulations on this scroll of ancient paper. You've read it all? No, you can just tell me after reading it. The man was never interested in this kind of thing, but I suddenly thought of something. What? Phoenix's interest was piqued. The moment the man saw her eyes light up, he felt as if he had seen something small. It was furry and he wanted to touch it. Speaking of which, she was originally a phoenix. If someone asks, who was the one who pursued who? In order to avoid being exposed, the uniform answer is that you are pursuing me. Phoenix's hand that was eating peanuts paused. Why aren't you the one who pursued me? Do you think I look like someone who would chase after someone? The man asked unhurriedly. Phoenix glanced at him. Indeed, he didn't look like the emperor who would have countless followers just by waving his hand. But she didn't look like someone who would chase after someone either. I'm the one who proposed and you're the one who pursued me. This is only fair. The man's words sounded very reasonable. Phoenix nodded. I heard from Eularo that there are many things to do when pursuing someone. That was before you pursued me. Now, you have pursued me. The man's voice was always very indifferent. Phoenix, she didn't do anything, but she managed to pursue him. Indeed, the ancients were right. There was only a thin veil between a woman pursuing a man. All right, it's settled then. Phoenix said and added, remember to bring the mythical water tomorrow. The man's long legs paused. Even his voice became distant. Okay. Sure enough, it was just like what everyone in the Six Paths said. Except for the body tree. Phoenix of Buddhism didn't care about anything. Emperor. When the young novice monk saw the man coming out, he quickly went up to him. He couldn't tell if the man was happy or not, but he felt that the surrounding air was a little cold. He stuttered, you and Lord Phoenix, you too? The man smiled and said, it's nothing. When the young novice monk heard the words nothing, he really thought that it was nothing. He heaved a heavy sigh of relief. Little monk felt that his guess was correct. He carried the food box peacefully and sent it to Phoenix. Lord, I knew that you wouldn't agree to Emperor's proposal. Phoenix was reading the third daily task on the ancient scroll. When she heard Little Monk's words, she raised her head and glanced at him. Thank you for your trust, but I agree. Thump. The food box in Little Monk's hand fell. Then, he laughed and said, Lord, you're making fun of me again. How can you say such things casually? I'm not talking nonsense. I agree. The more nonchalant Phoenix was, the more Little Monk felt that she was joking. In short, no one believed that Phoenix and Emperor, who were like fire and water, would be together. Even when Emperor and Phoenix sat together for a meal the next day, the bystanders thought that the two of them had gone from a superficial battle to a psychological battle. Until 5 days later, Tian Dao invited Buddhism to a banquet and arranged for the gods to return. People then realized that the way these two people interacted with each other was indeed different from before. This time, Tian Dao was in charge. Emperor naturally sat on the divine throne. He did not react to anyone who came in. He only raised his eyes when Phoenix arrived on the clouds. His eyebrows were handsome and his eyes were distinct. The man curled the corners of his lips slightly. He stared at the cold and quiet figure in the crowd. A smile appeared in his dark eyes. He only said 2 words, come here. When Phoenix heard his voice, she was stunned at first. Her dark eyes were covered with a thin layer of mist. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she naturally walked towards the man. One of them was standing while the other was sitting. The distance between them was not close, but it gave people an indescribable feeling of ambiguity. It easily caused a commotion around them. The gods and Buddhas present could not help but stop what they were doing. They raised their heads and looked at the two of them. What was going on? They actually did not fight. Not only did they not fight, they even looked so harmonious. That's right, it was harmonious. But how was this possible? Unlike the panicked gods and Buddhas, the demons that Emperor raised in the dark mainly focused their attention on Phoenix. She was indeed the variable that fell from the sky. The bathing Phoenix who was at the top of all Buddhas. She was a living immortal who did not eat the food of mortals. She was too pure. In addition to being pure, Her eyes were also very beautiful. They were as black as ink. If one looked at them for a long time, they would sink into them. No wonder Emperor wanted to hunt her down. As far as they knew, the more beautiful something was, the more it could stimulate Emperor's competitiveness. Chapter 806. What are we going to do today? A certain emperor was always so nonchalant, as if no one was around. It was as if he was born this way, just like the green bamboo and winter plum blossoms that could never melt away from the hustle and bustle of the world. Others did not know what he was talking about. However, Phoenix knew. She took out the ancient scroll that she always carried with her and glanced at it. Her gaze fell on the 6th item and she whispered, according to the progress, we should be holding hands today. But won't it be weird when we eat? The man looked at Phoenix and did not say anything. He directly took action. He reached out and held her hand. Then, with a strong force, he held it in a domineering manner. Phoenix paused for a moment. Then, she lowered her head and looked at the man. How am I going to eat like this? I'll feed you. The man's fingertips fell on the 7th item of the ancient scroll. It shone with the light of pearls and precious stones. While you're at it, you can also complete the 7th item. Today is the right day to show off your love in public. Phoenix thought about it and agreed. The heavenly feast this time had invited everyone from the 6 realms. It was more than the Buddhist feast last time. It was indeed in line with the 7th item. Someone had thought of it quite well. Phoenix felt a sense of accomplishment to be able to complete 2 items in one day. Hence, she sat beside the emperor with a smile. However, this scene was too exciting for the gods and Buddhas. Am I seeing things? Just now, the emperor held Phoenix's hand. Most importantly, Phoenix looked so sweet instead of cutting him with a machete. Hair, there must be something wrong. There must be something wrong somewhere. No, I'm going to pursue my beloved goddess. Since the emperor can be together with Phoenix, why can't I pursue Chang'e? Chang'e was speechless. Phoenix looked at the chaotic scene below. Now, she could finally experience the fun that the man had mentioned. Sure enough, it was always pleasant to see others getting angry. Although Golden Lotus became a Buddha late, she was arranged to sit at the front because she was born in front of the Buddha. Naturally, she saw everything that happened. Her originally gentle face froze for a moment. Then, she smiled and said, Lord Phoenix, why didn't you tell us about such a good thing? I even took the initiative to introduce the god of Tianshan to you. It turns out that you've been together with the emperor for a long time. This is so unexpected. I don't even know what to say. Hearing that, Phoenix lifted her eyes and glanced in the direction of Golden Lotus. Her lips curled into a smile and she looked lazy. However, the Buddhist prayer beads on her wrist glowed as if they could see through people. At a time like this, shouldn't it be enough to just say congratulations? Of course. Golden Lotus paused for a moment and immediately said, Of course, I have to congratulate you. It's just that I'm so surprised. During the Buddha feast, you and the emperor were fighting fiercely. In just a few days, you and the emperor are together. If I tell this to the Venerable, he'll definitely be happy for you. Hearing this, the others in the 6th Tao began to discuss. That's right. A few days ago, didn't they say that Emperor and Phoenix would either mock or fight each other when they met? How did they get along so well today? The man crossed his legs slightly. His deep eyes swept downwards like the dark night. There was a reason why Phoenix took action that day. That's right. She did have a reason. However, someone shouldn't know about this reason. Phoenix was more or less confused. The gods below asked, What's the reason? Jealousy. There was a smile in the man's voice. Actually, Phoenix has always been chasing after me. She doesn't like it when I interact with other women. She also doesn't like it when someone introduces someone to me. The gods and Buddhas didn't expect this reason. To be honest, even Phoenix herself didn't expect this reason. She turned her head and glanced at the man. Don't worry. I won't see other women in the future. A certain emperor was very calm. He was addicted to acting. Phoenix didn't know what to say at all. She could only keep silent. Instead, The surrounding people started to discuss incessantly. So it was because of this. In other words, Phoenix and Emperor didn't see eye to eye before because Phoenix was jealous when the Emperor met other women? Probably. Eularo listened to the commotion. He didn't have the mood to drink anymore. He looked at the two people sitting in the seat of honor and thought to himself, probably not. These two people were born with the fate of either you die or I live. They would never be together. Moreover, one of them was Phoenix of Buddhism. Phoenix couldn't be married. Otherwise, the people of Buddhism wouldn't have kept her in Buddhism. She was the only one who became a Buddha by killing. Buddhism still needed her as a sharp blade. If a sharp blade had feelings, how could it be unstoppable in the sixth Tao and deliver all living beings from torment? Even if she had feelings, she had to keep her feelings in Buddhism. However, if the other party was the Emperor who wasn't controlled by the sixth Tao, wait. Could it be that something went wrong? Eularo suddenly stood up and walked out with a pale face. He didn't care that someone was calling him from behind. He hurried back to Eularo Temple and said to his two disciples, "Where is the string that I asked you to set up for the Emperor?" The two disciples looked at each other. "Isn't it in your pocket?" "Master, don't tell me you're drunk again." "My pocket." Eularo seemed to have remembered something. He reached out and touched his robe. It was empty, and even the book was gone. How could this be? Where did it go? The two disciples looked at each other again and said slowly, "Master, your character of forgetting things after drinking is really bad. Last time, when the Emperor gave you the Osmanthus wine, you were addicted to it. Didn't you exchange the thing in your pocket with the Emperor? The Emperor even said that you couldn't get it back after you exchanged it. You even nodded and agreed. What the hell? I'm finished." Eularo knocked his head heavily. His brain really didn't learn. He was clearly on guard against that person asking him, but why did he tell him everything when he asked? However, the Emperor, why didn't you just tie the red string of fate to anyone but Phoenix? What exactly do you want to do? Eularo knew the Emperor very well. This person was naturally fickle. He definitely didn't fall in love with Phoenix. He must have other plans. Eularo was right. The man did have his own plans, especially for Phoenix. "Sleep at my place tonight." Chapter 807. Wait a minute. What did he hear? The Emperor asked her to sleep at his place. Sleep. Little Monk was still holding the vegetarian food that his master wanted to pack. After hearing this news, he was completely dumbfounded. The victorious fighting Buddha and Sea Immortal, who were sitting beside them, almost spat out the food in their mouth. Two pairs of eyes looked at Phoenix with sparkling eyes. Sleeping together so quickly? Is it really good to develop so quickly? Phoenix felt a little embarrassed being stared at. With so many pairs of eyes watching her eat, her digestion would be affected. However, "Why do you want me to sleep at your place?" Phoenix raised her eyebrows. "Why don't you sleep at my place? It's very comfortable there. The clouds are thick." Everyone was speechless. Was sleeping there the main point? The main point was that the two of them were going to sleep together. "Okay. I'm not used to sleeping in the clouds." The man paused and whispered in Phoenix's ear, and the manual also states that the female should sleep at the male's place. Phoenix knew this, but were they really going to sleep together? Isn't it fine to just go through the formalities? I can go to your place, lie down, and then return to my place. As Phoenix spoke, she looked at the hand that was holding her. She wouldn't have known if she didn't look, but when she compared them, she realized that even this pair of hands was better looking than hers. This man was indeed the public enemy of the world. After hearing Phoenix's words, the man smiled and his eyes were cold. "I think we should follow the manual seriously. The manual states that we should spend the night. But isn't it too fast for us to change from the 7th to the 19th rule?" Phoenix's tone was inevitably a little doubtful. The man's thin lips curled up. "With our intelligence, it's fine to be faster, isn't it?" That's true. Phoenix had always felt that the man was smart, and she wasn't stupid. It was fine to be faster. The man looked at her nodding seriously, and the smile in his eyes couldn't be concealed anymore. He actually took it seriously. "What are you smiling about?" Phoenix raised her head and glanced at him. Her thin lips were slightly pursed, and there was an obvious curve on her face. It was a rare expression. The man's eyes darkened. He reached out and turned her face around. Phoenix was not slow either. Seeing that he was about to make a move, she immediately clasped his wrist with 10% of her strength. The man soon felt the pain, but he didn't let go. He just curled his lips playfully. How could he forget that if this woman was really angry, no one could stop her? The more she was like this, the more pleasurable it would be to break her. Ha! It's nothing. There's something on your face. The man moved his finger and rubbed the tip of Phoenix's nose, pulling out a strand of hair. Phoenix let go of his hand and thought for a moment before saying, "Next time you come near me, tell me. I'm fast." The man nodded to show that he understood. His voice was very light. "Go back and pack your things in a while. You still need to pack." Phoenix ate the food that he gave her. Her face was full of surprise. She had never had the experience of being a guest at someone's house. It was inevitable that her eyes would widen. The man suddenly felt that it was not bad to feed someone like this. As long as that person could be like little Phoenix, she would be quiet when she wasn't eating, but when she was eating, her cold little face would puff up and her beautiful eyes would look at you with clear distinction. The only fly in the ointment was that the time was too short. In order to make this time longer, it would be best if he could make that pair of eyes only have him in them. Of course, you have to pack your things for the night. The man smiled again. His finger moved across the first few items. Furthermore, we can do all of these once overnight. Phoenix's gaze followed the man's finger. Kiss on the forehead. Say goodnight. Read on the other person's lap. Didn't you say that with our intelligence, we can skip these things? I just thought about it. Since we can do all of these things before the night, why not? The man's tone was very calm. It was as if he was saying buy one get one free. Why not? It was very convincing. Phoenix had never been someone who liked to be taken advantage of. Furthermore, it was a very fun game. Since they could do all of it, they might as well do it once. All right then, I will go back and pack my things in a while. Phoenix had never stayed outside for the night. This experience was very interesting. She believed it again. The smile in the man's eyes surged again. He looked at the round little face that he was feeding. It was unexpectedly cute. At this moment, the only ones who could hear the man's words were the demons' faces twitching. Although they had always known that the emperor was very shameless, they didn't expect him to be so shameless. He actually used words like "since we can do all of these things before the night, why not?" to trick them. He obviously wanted to do it. The moment he opened his mouth, he wanted to abduct them to sleep in his house. It was obvious that he wanted to do these things. "You better be quiet." The man lowered his voice and warned the demons behind him. "If you are too noisy, I will lose my patience. If I lose my patience, you know the consequences." The demons instantly shut their mouths and retracted their breath. However, Phoenix still sensed something. She looked up at the man and asked, "Did you just release the demons from the blood sea? Sometimes, they need to breathe." The man smiled. He turned his head and asked Phoenix, "Do you want to eat another little bean?" Phoenix shook her head and said in a low voice, "I don't like sweet things." It was natural for the two of them to exchange one sentence after another. It was rare that the emperor was smiling all the time and looked very patient. The Buddhas and gods were stunned. It was too exciting. "Drink another cup. You don't eat meat too, right?" The man seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked her. Phoenix nodded and didn't say much. The man smiled. A ray of light flashed across his eyes. What would happen if she ate it? He really wanted to see. Sensing this thought, the demons looked at each other. Emperor wanted to let Phoenix eat meat. Wasn't that breaking the precept? Phoenix was a Buddhist. Eating meat was tantamount to breaking the Buddhist precept of killing. Although her hands were stained with blood, it was all because of voodoo. However, eating meat was different. It was indeed different. Phoenix had never eaten meat. She only ate a bowl of noodles in the human world once. There was no meat in that bowl, but it was cooked with pig soup. After returning to Buddhism, she vomited as if she had shed a layer of skin. She didn't even have any strength left. This was her only weakness. Except for Body, no one knew about this weakness. She didn't intend to let anyone see it. Chapter 808. My lord, don't tell me you're really going to sleep at Emperor's place. The small monk struggled to move his short legs as he furrowed his brows. Phoenix used the holy water that the man gave her to water the Body tree as she replied, "Of course it's true. But you can't leave Buddhism." The small monk said seriously, "If you leave, you'll feel uncomfortable." Phoenix turned around and glanced at the small monk. "I'll be fine if I stay with that person." "Why?" The small monk didn't understand. Phoenix opened the second bottle and said, "Because he has never converted, so he won't be controlled by Buddhism." "There's actually someone who hasn't converted." The small monk opened his eyes wide. In his mind, one had to convert to become a god or a Buddha. Phoenix naturally knew what the small monk was thinking. She yawned lazily and said, "He's different. He was originally formed from the essence of heaven and earth. He doesn't need to convert to become a Buddha or a god. It's all up to him." The small monk was stunned. No wonder everyone says that Emperor is powerful. So that's why. It also depends on the person. There are a few who were formed from the essence of heaven and earth. However, Buddhism can't do anything to this person. Back then, Buddhism also wanted to convert him. Until now, they still want to subdue him. Phoenix smiled at the end of her sentence. There was a hint of mockery in her smile. Who was she mocking? Buddha. The small monk felt that he had seen wrongly. He shook his head and looked at Phoenix, who was pouring the second bottle of holy water. Only then did he realize that something was wrong. "My lord, why did you pour 2 bottles of holy water today?" "Oh, I'm going to spend the night outside. If it's comfortable to sleep at Emperor's place, I might sleep for 2 more days." As someone who had never been a guest at someone else's place, Phoenix felt that it was very interesting. Moreover, that person had many demons at his place. When she was free, she could feed them like goldfish. Phoenix felt that it was interesting, but the small monk felt like he was struck by lightning. "Isn't it enough to sleep for a while? You want me to stay for 2 more days? So you can go pack up now. Help me put on my robe too." After Phoenix finished speaking, she stood up and said to Body in a low voice, "Now that someone is inviting me over as a guest, shouldn't I bring some gifts?" "Forget it, he has everything anyway." No one knew what Phoenix meant by that. Only Subhuti could understand. It had been hundreds of years since the day little Phoenix came to the huge mountain tenure. Finally, there was someone who was willing to be her friend. He could finally not be so lonely. From dusk to sunset, Body was still standing in front of the Buddhist gate, swaying gently. But this time, the wind was much gentler. Amidst the Sanskrit chants, he blew open the scripture belonging to the phoenix, deceiving the layers of Buddhist chants. All the mockery and disrespect that rose in Phoenix's heart. Everything was well whitewashed by him. This was the only way to stall for time and allow her to do what she wanted to do. Because once Phoenix was rebellious, Buddhism would immediately send a heavenly tribulation. This was the only thing he could do to make her feel less lonely, even if the person who made her feel happy was not him. Perhaps no one knew. How did Body feel at that moment, standing in the vast sea of clouds? There was something he had never told Phoenix. He would help her do what she wanted to do. If one day, she was injured and wanted to return, he would wait for her at the same place. But Body knew that once that person made a decision, she would not turn back. It was nighttime, the sky was full of stars. Tian Dao was different from the human world. One could see the Milky Way when one looked down. Phoenix had seen such a scene many times. But today, it was more beautiful than usual. Sleeping in someone else's house. She had always thought that she would not have the chance. She did not expect to fulfill such a wish in her lifetime. At that time, little Phoenix's thoughts were so simple. Moreover, they were very polite and brought gifts, but they were all fish food. So that she could feed those demons when she was bored at night. When the immortals saw Phoenix coming from afar, every one of them looked like they were facing a formidable enemy. Those who were yawning stopped, those who rubbed their eyes stopped, and even those who were walking almost fell down. Quick, inform all the immortals that Lord Phoenix is here. She's holding something in her hand. It must be a weapon. She's here to fight with Her Highness. But Her Highness is still sleeping. What should we do? What should we do? The others can't beat Lord Phoenix. Calm down. How can you panic as an immortal? If you're not panicking, you go. I. Phoenix looked at the immortals who were pushing each other back. She wanted to ask someone for directions, but no one dared to come close to her within 5 meters. Phoenix looked left and right. She had no choice but to grab one of the immortals. That immortal shouted, "Lord Phoenix, I have children and elders. I'm also skinny. I can't take a beating. You won't feel good if you beat me." Phoenix smiled and thought that this immortal was quite interesting. Who said I'm here to beat you up? Where's your emperor? Emperor isn't here. He's gone out. Really? The immortal was afraid that Phoenix would not believe him, so he spoke reasonably in order to prevent an assassination. Recently, there have been a lot of matchmaking for emperor. He went to a banquet. Phoenix raised her beautiful eyebrows and smiled even wider. Do you know what happened to someone who lied to me last time? Hearing this, the immortal's body stiffened. Come, I'll give you another chance. Tell me, where's your emperor? Phoenix's tone was very gentle. However, the gentler she was, the more afraid the immortal was. He stretched out his finger and pointed behind him. After getting the answer he wanted, Phoenix smiled and let go of the immortal. Then, she passed the thing in her other hand to him. This is a gift for your emperor. A gift? The immortal did not dare to accept it. He did not believe that it was a gift. This must be a trap. Definitely. How could Lord Phoenix give his emperor a gift? It was more likely that she gave him a bomb. Phoenix saw that he did not move, so she could only take back her hand. She originally wanted to be a polite guest like an ordinary person, but now it seemed that the effect was not good. The immortal saw that Phoenix was indeed different from usual. He hesitated for a while and asked, "Lord, are you really here to give the emperor a gift?" Phoenix nodded. Was it strange for her to give a gift? The immortal still refused to believe it. At this moment, an old immortal came out from inside. When he saw Phoenix standing outside the door, he quickly greeted her. "Lord, why are you here so early? The emperor told me that you would come tonight. I thought you would only come after reciting the scriptures. I was about to ask someone to pick you up from Buddhism." Chapter 809. You don't have to recite the scriptures today. Phoenix wasn't paying attention when she was reciting the scriptures. She smiled and passed the item in her hand over. "This is for your emperor." The old immortal hurriedly took it with both hands. "The emperor will be happy to see this. He has been waiting for you for a long time and is now resting. The emperor specially instructed me to bring you into the palace when you arrive." Phoenix's attention wasn't on the fact that the man had been waiting for her. Little Phoenix felt a sense of accomplishment because the gift she had prepared was finally delivered successfully. She was very happy about this. The immortals were still in a state of disbelief. They looked at Phoenix's back in astonishment and tugged at the old immortal's sleeve. "Old immortal, did the emperor really instruct Lady Phoenix to enter the palace? Are they really not going to fight? All right, stop guessing. Lady Phoenix is here as a guest. She might even stay here for a few days. Be smart and don't talk nonsense in front of her. Be careful, the emperor might punish you if he's unhappy," the old immortal said. The immortals were stunned and looked at each other. "Did you hear that just now? My ears must be playing tricks on me. Ha, stay for a few days? The emperor has never let anyone stay overnight, let alone Lady Phoenix, who has always been at odds with the emperor." If that's the case, one of the immortals muttered to himself, the rumor might be true. The others looked at him. What rumor? The immortal didn't expect that his words would cause such a big reaction. He lowered his voice and said, "Someone said that during the banquet today, the emperor announced that he and Lady Phoenix are together." Hearing this, all the immortals were petrified. Their mouths were wide open as they stood rooted to the ground. Phoenix didn't think much of the commotion caused by the immortals. After all, she also liked to see other people's shocked expressions. The Dowager Duchess brought Phoenix around a ladder and stood at the side. She bowed and said, "My lord, the Emperor is inside. He never likes people to enter his chambers, so it's not convenient for this old one to enter. This way, please." Phoenix nodded and walked toward the innermost area. The heavenly Tao was different from Buddhism. No, it should be said that the man lived in a different place from the one she lived in. In Buddhism, as long as there was a floating cloud, she could sleep. But here, the towering stone pillars of the man, together with the colored glaze incense, appeared to be grand and cold everywhere. In the center of the clouds, there was a large, dark-colored bed. It looked like it was covered with crow feathers. The contrast between black and white revealed the owner's unique domineering aura. The man was sleeping on his stomach. Half of his head was buried in the pillow. His hair was disheveled, revealing half of his well-defined face. The snow-white blanket covered half of his back, leaving the other half exposed. There was also an arm that was hanging down on the ground. The well-defined honey-colored muscles were on full display. Even the rise and fall of his breathing could be seen clearly. Was he sleeping? She did not expect that such a domineering and indifferent person would be so harmless after he fell asleep. His thick eyelashes drooped down, casting shadows. His outstanding facial features looked particularly elegant in this situation. Phoenix did not disturb him. She looked at the large bookshelf behind the man. It was full of records about the heavenly Tao. Every ancient scroll that fell into the human world would be regarded as a divine record. Phoenix took a random book and sat lazily on the wooden chair beside it. Just as she opened the long scroll, the man on the bed woke up. His eyes were as cold as ice. Phoenix knew that this was the real him. No matter how polite he was at the banquet, it was only his disguise. "When did you come?" Perhaps it was because he had just woken up. The man's voice sounded deeper than usual. Phoenix closed the scroll in her hand and replied, "Just now." The man glanced at her and sat up. As the quilt slid down, the man's muscular chest and waist were exposed. There was not a trace of excess fat on his waist. His figure was so good that it could beat all the divine records in the heavenly Tao. Although Phoenix had killed many people, she had little contact with others. Seeing such a scene, she subconsciously looked away. The man smiled and patted the space beside him. "Come here. Come here." Phoenix frowned. "Don't you have any other places to sleep? Or I can lie down and sleep in the clouds." The man looked at her. After a while, he said, "The book says that we can sleep together." "Okay." Phoenix hesitated for a moment and slowly walked to the bed. The man leaned against the headboard and looked at her playfully. "Are you afraid that I will do something to you?" No. It was just that she had never slept with others before. However, if she really said it, the man would not do anything to her. Her scimitar was on her wrist. If the man dared to cross the line, she could just attack. She had heard that many people in the Sixth Tao had sent women to him, but he had never accepted them. He probably had no interest in women. Moreover, they would not have anything to do with each other. After thinking it through, Phoenix lifted the white quilt and crawled under it. She pulled the quilt to her chest and turned to look at the man. Lying so close to him, their black hair seemed to be touching each other and their breaths were intertwined. Phoenix suddenly remembered that the man seemed to be sleeping naked. For some reason, her heart started to beat faster. Yes, this was not normal. However, when Phoenix came up, the man who was sitting suddenly leaned toward her. He was so close to her that Phoenix felt uncomfortable for a moment. She did not know what the other party's scent was. It was light and heavy, with the smell of mint and the remnants of smoke. It was even pleasant. However, this person's aggressive aura was too strong, so strong that it was a little evil. "You trust me that much? I've brought you a gift." Almost at the same time, the two of them spoke. The man's fingers that were about to press down paused. "What gift?" "Wait." Phoenix ran out excitedly. After a while, she ran back with a bag of fish food in her hand. "We can feed these to the monsters at night." Don't you like to treat them as goldfish? The man looked at the fish food and then looked at Phoenix's beautiful eyes. The power gathered in his palm dissipated. Then, he reached out and pulled her over. With a smile on his face, he said, "Okay." It was obvious that a certain emperor liked this fish food very much. However, only the monsters knew that before Phoenix took out the gift. The emperor's thoughts towards her were definitely not simple. Chapter 8:10. Since she was going to feed the fish, she naturally had to call out all the monsters. Although the man didn't say anything, his eyes were full of warning. He wanted them to remember not to say anything that they shouldn't say. The monsters immediately put on a "I'm very obedient, I'm a goldfish" pose. Phoenix really felt that someone's place was very good. There were so many new things here. Moreover, those monsters were very obedient after being tamed by him. They did whatever he wanted them to do. The man laughed and put his hands behind his head. "Hey, you're not going to feed the goldfish the whole night, are you?" "Of course not." Phoenix thought for a moment and looked at the man's face. Suddenly, she leaned over and her thin lips fell on his forehead. She murmured, "And a kiss. Then it's done." A certain emperor didn't expect that she would kiss him. A trace of surprise flashed across his usually indifferent and handsome face. Even the monsters who were in the shape of goldfish were stunned by Phoenix's action. To be honest, they didn't expect that Phoenix would take the initiative in this kind of thing. They were already prepared for the emperor to be done this way and that by Phoenix. Why didn't she do as they had agreed? After Phoenix kissed him, she saw that the man was looking at her coldly. It was as if what she was doing now was too much. She felt that she had to explain. "Didn't you want to kiss him? It's written on the booklet. You did want to kiss him, but your kiss was too perfunctory." The man reached out and pulled her back. When couples in the human world are together, they are never perfunctory. "If you don't know how, I can teach you." Phoenix thought for a moment and nodded. She actually agreed. At this moment, all the monsters were stunned. Phoenix had always been smart. Why was she so dumb when it came to relationships? The emperor was obviously tricking her. The man was also a little surprised. "You agreed. I heard that you're very good at this." Phoenix paused and said, "Moreover, it's my first time being a guest in someone's house. I can't let others think that I'm being perfunctory." The man looked at the serious little face in front of him and suddenly smiled. "That's interesting. Who told you that I'm very good at that?" "Oh, the last time I went to the snow region to hunt demons, I met the divine lord who was matchmaking for you. He talked to the snow mountain goddess's father and emphasized on this matter. The demons I want to hunt are in their generation, so they have no choice but to listen. In the end, they were the ones who discovered me, and all of them blushed." At this point, Phoenix was baffled. "Until now, I still don't understand why those two people blushed." The fiendish demons rubbed their foreheads. Even a big girl would blush if she heard them talking about such things. And then, the man was interested to hear how she dealt with it. Phoenix looked at him and said, "Later on, I caught the monster right in front of them and brought it back to be reformed by Buddhism." The demons. At that time, they must have wanted to dig a hole and bury themselves. How could you still be in the mood to hunt demons? The man could no longer hold back his smile. He buried his face in her neck and stopped what he was going to do. "Why are you laughing like that? Is there anything wrong with what I did?" Phoenix frowned. "I didn't want to interrupt their conversation, but you know that I can't leave Buddhism for too long. Moreover, that evil demon was jumping around in front of them. It was really challenging my patience. I told them to continue with their conversation and not to bother about me. Who knew that I would scare them away?" The man reached out and pulled Phoenix's hand over. There was a rare doting tone in his voice. "Yes, they are more timid. Only then did I know that your selling point is your ability. No wonder so many people are matchmaking for you." Phoenix covered herself with the quilt. She rarely chatted with others while lying down, so she had a lot to say. She did not realize that her last sentence made the man's eyes darken. "My selling point is my strong ability, isn't it?" Phoenix asked back. This question. Which man would say that he was not strong enough? The demons looked at each other. In fact, they felt that it was not so easy for the Emperor to deal with Phoenix. At the very least, until now, the Emperor had not used his sinister methods. It could be seen that being dull had its benefits. Besides, Phoenix was smart. She was dull throughout the process, but her last sentence was very powerful. The man's eyes darkened, but he smiled evilly. Do you want to try? What? Phoenix raised her eyebrows. The man unbuttoned her kasaya with his fingers. His thin lips curved slightly. My ability. When he said this, the man had already activated the array. No one could break through the array, be it demons or immortals. Just like what Phoenix said, this man was the only one who would not be controlled by Buddhism. Phoenix's skin was white. The looseness of her kasaya easily exposed her collarbone and chest. There was always a kind of breathtaking beauty. Seeing this, the man's eyes became more and more gloomy. Even his breath became hotter. You're so beautiful. It's a pity that you're raised in Buddhism. Phoenix did not expect things to turn out this way. She stared at the eyes that were close to her. The next moment, the Buddhist prayer beads in her hand turned into a scimitar full of hostility. The man chuckled and glanced at her side. Then, he pressed her shoulder with one hand. Why are you using a scimitar on the bed? Don't you want me to teach you? Don't forget, you're here as a guest. When Phoenix heard the word guest, she felt that she had overreacted. She put away her scimitar and said, I won't try that kind of thing. As she said that, Phoenix reached out to push him away, but before she could touch his body. The man suddenly pulled her into his arms. She did not know if it was because she had violated the Buddhist doctrine. A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky and fell behind them. With a crack, sparks flew everywhere. Everything was still. In a flash, he suddenly laughed. He was completely unaffected. He reached out his finger and touched her lips gently. You don't have to try that kind of thing, but you have to connect the kiss. What do you think? The man's thin lips were only a few centimeters away from her. His fingers were also very warm. Phoenix did not know why her heart suddenly beat faster. It was just that it seemed to be too close. She had never felt this way before. Before she could figure it out, her thin lips were completely covered by another person's breath. The man's unique sandalwood scent filled her mouth. Phoenix suddenly widened her eyes. Just like that, she stared at him blankly. The man's eyes were slightly closed, his eyelashes were still trembling, his tall nose was close to hers, and there was a light smile at the tip of his brows and the corners of his eyes. Chapter 8:11. Even his hand was holding the back of her head. He kissed her hard and started to attack her crazily. It was not like the man's usual behavior at all. Phoenix felt like she was suffocating. Her mind was filled with white snowflakes. She had never felt like this before. All the oxygen was taken away by him. Her chest was pressed down. The tall body on top of her was getting hotter and hotter, as if it was going to burn her up. The longer they kissed, the more numb her tongue became. He gently parted his lips and his voice was strangely hoarse. How do you feel? Feel? Phoenix subconsciously wanted to reject such intimacy. However, her arms were firmly held by the man. He looked at her for a while and his hand reached under her chin. Phoenix's kasaya was wide, so it was convenient for the man to do this kind of thing. This is the first time I feel that the clothes of Buddhism are not bad. The man smiled and pressed his lips against her ear. He touched it with the tip of his hot tongue and slowly moved down. Phoenix's body went numb and stiffened. She felt as if she had been electrocuted. Her body twisted uncontrollably in the warm blanket. She did not allow him to continue his impudence. She clasped his wrist. Her breath was a little chaotic. It feels a little strange. It should be enough for practice. Enough. The man reached out and stroked her skin. It was so soft and tender that it almost absorbed his hand. How could such a touch be enough? Phoenix looked at him. Yes, it's enough. Okay. The man let go of his hand and smiled again with a playful look. His fingers patted her back gently as if he was treating his pet. It's enough for today. We'll continue tomorrow. Such an interesting phoenix, of course, he had to eat slowly. Phoenix felt as if someone was pressing something against her thigh. It was very hot and she felt somewhat uncomfortable. However, it seemed that no one had hugged her to sleep since she was a child. Phoenix could remember things from when she was reciting scriptures on Mountain Tenure. She remembered that at that time, the people around her would always look at her with strange gazes. Because in Buddhism, other than the little monk and the little monk, there had never been a child who looked like her. The Venerable held her hand and introduced her to everyone. So she's that phoenix. Which phoenix? It's the phoenix born from hell, the phoenix that symbolizes great misfortune. Why would Phoenix have such a bad omen? Yes, Phoenix was also wondering why she had such a bad omen. At that time, little Phoenix already knew how to recite scriptures and knew what a great omen was. An existence that was not expected or liked by others. The days that followed seemed to prove this point. No one spoke to her. The little phoenixes in Mountain Tenure were all alone. She stayed quietly and obediently. She never talked to anyone, let alone made friends. She had also seen some little novice monks who were on good terms with each other would sleep together. Everyone looked happy. Indeed, it was very warm to be hugged by someone. It was like an invisible air that surrounded her under the tight blanket. Moreover, the way the man patted her back was really beautiful. Phoenix felt that she had gained something. She reached out and hugged the man's waist that felt good to the touch. She muttered, "You Laro's handbook is really good." The man lowered his head and looked at Phoenix in his arms. He smiled and said, "It's really good. What were you thinking about just now?" "Nothing." Phoenix tilted her head. "I was thinking about what happened when I was born. You should know that I was born from hell. They said that there were originally 2 eggs, but when they broke out of the shell, only I was left." The man smiled ambiguously. "You're saying that the moment you broke out of the shell, the blood sea sent down 33 thunder tribulations. You were born with a face of extreme evil?" "Yes." Phoenix closed her eyes. She looked like she was going to sleep. The man reached out and brushed away the long hair on her face. His voice was faint. "If you weren't born with the face of extreme evil, no one would use Buddhism. These people always need someone to hold a knife to achieve their deliverance of all living beings. Since that's the case, why should they decide whether it's good or bad?" When Phoenix heard the last sentence, she opened her eyes again. There seemed to be countless dazzling stars in the bottom of her eyes. "You're right. Are you that happy?" The man chuckled. Phoenix sat up. "A little. Let's continue to feed those demons fish food. Or should we go and fight?" The demons were speechless. "Is this how you express your joy?" Therefore, that day, the demons from the blood sea almost vomited after eating the fish food. However, they didn't understand what the emperor meant. They had never seen a man pamper Phoenix like he pampered someone else. Could it be that he was sincere? That shouldn't be possible. They knew what this man wanted to do. Once he got what he wanted, it wouldn't be too fresh. He had always been like this. The man indeed thought the same, although he treated Phoenix differently from others. However, what he wanted to do had never changed. He wanted to completely destroy this proud person. Now was not enough. Her eyes were still not completely looking at him. The man had never forgotten what Phoenix looked like when he first saw her. At that time, she was still young. But she grew up to look like a teenager. In order to convert him, Buddhism trapped him in the forbidden land of the 33rd heaven. He only sneered at those Sanskrit words, and it was a piercing pain. However, these could not subdue him. He broke the thunder shield and was covered in blood. The Venerable retreated in the face of difficulties, causing the clouds to surge. 49 days passed. As long as he could resist the Sanskrit words, he would not be restrained by Buddhism. On the 47th day, he met her. She held the scripture and looked at him with her head tilted. Then, she knelt beside him and looked at him again. She asked, "Why are you kneeling here?" He ignored her. He had always disdained people from Buddhism, not to mention that she was still a child. She was quiet. After a while, she ran away. When she reappeared, there was a steamed bun in her hand. At that time, he did not have a divine position. He came from chaos, so it was easy for him to go hungry. However, he did not expect that there would be someone in Buddhism who dared to send him food. However, he was indifferent by nature. He did not care about the consequences of breaking the Buddhist precepts. He ate when there was food. Later, on the 49th day, he broke through the light of Buddha. There was nothing in this world that could bind him anymore. Originally, it was just a sharp blade of Buddhism. He did not care much about it. However, when he saw her again, she only had eyes for the Bodhi tree. When she passed by him, she had a curved blade in her hand. She looked cold. The man admitted that he was such an impatient person. Since the other party didn't have him in her eyes, then he would break her pride. Chapter 8:12. The news of Phoenix's visit to Tiandao spread the next day. All the immortals gathered to discuss matters related to Tiandao. From time to time, they would glance at the emperor, who was sitting in the seat of honor. When the meeting was over, the old man who wanted to introduce the Snow Mountain goddess to the emperor leaned over and asked carefully, "Emperor, I heard that Phoenix went to look for you last night?" "Yes." The man glanced at the old man and recalled what Phoenix told him last night. He smiled and asked, "What's the matter?" The old man saw that he had spoken and continued to dawdle. "Is Phoenix here to fight with you?" "Who won in the end?" "Emperor, I don't mean anything else. I just feel that the sea of blood has just been cleared, so it's not suitable to have a dispute with Buddhism." At the end of his speech, the old man was afraid that the emperor would misunderstand his meaning, so he added an additional explanation. "Who said that she's here to fight with me?" The man crossed his legs slightly and smiled at the old man. The old man could not tell whether he was happy or angry from his attitude. However, other than fighting, the old man could not think of any other reason why Phoenix would look for the emperor. Buddhism would not tolerate the emperor bringing these demons to Mountain Tenure again. It was understandable that Phoenix would be sent to Tiandao to purge them. So, what else could it be if not a fight? The old man was seriously doubtful. The other immortals also stopped in their tracks, intending to listen to some gossip. The man stood up and walked to the old man with his slender legs. "As my fiancé, she wants to connect with me." The old man almost choked on his saliva. He said in shock, "Connect? Fiancé?" This was even more horrifying than if they had perished together. Emperor glanced at him. "Why? Didn't you hear the news that we planned to be together at the banquet? Isn't that a rumor?" The old man did not take it seriously. Emperor's thin lips curved and he looked devilishly handsome. "It's not a rumor. She's staying in my bedroom now." Almost in an instant, the great hall exploded. The immortal monarchs who were about to leave all stopped in their tracks. One after another, they said, "What the emperor just said can't be true, right?" "I think it's true. The emperor would never joke about such things." "But why did I hear that Phoenix was armed when she came yesterday?" "I don't know about that. The main point isn't what Phoenix brought back. The main point is that she's now living with Emperor." The man did not care about the discussions around him. In fact, he was very happy to see such a scene. From today onwards, no one would bother him with blind dates. Moreover, whether it was Tiandao or Buddhism, they would all know that Phoenix belonged to him. Yu Laro looked at Emperor's expression, and the worry on his face became even more intense. She couldn't hold it in any longer. Seeing the man walking out of the heavenly court, she followed him. "Emperor, Emperor, wait for me." It took some effort for Yu Laro to keep up with the man. The man stopped the floating cloud under his feet. There was no expression on his face. He glanced at Yu Laro indifferently and immediately felt like he was looking down on him. Yu Laro knew that he shouldn't speak. Being stared at by the man like this, his head buzzed a little, and his voice became much softer. The things that the emperor took from this old man really can't be used casually, especially when it's used on the Phoenix. "Yu Lao." The man turned around. Although there was still a smile on his face, his eyes were cold. For some reason, it made people feel a murderous aura. What do you think will happen to a divine lord who is in charge of marriage because he drank too much and lost the red string of fate? Eularo heard the threat in the man's words and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Emperor, it's not that I want to hinder you, but this marriage is really different from other things. Phoenix is destined to stay in Buddhism. Moreover, Phoenix doesn't like Emperor either. What's the use of tying the red string of fate on her hand like this? What's the use? The man sneered and patted Eularo's shoulder. What's the use? That's for me. You don't have to worry about this. Eularo was anxious. Emperor, I'm sure the Emperor doesn't like Phoenix either. It's only because she's too different that the Emperor's interest is piqued. But others are different. The Emperor knows about the body tree in Mountain Tenure. The body tree has feelings because of Phoenix. In another 500 years, the body tree in front of the Buddha's gate will transform into a human and become a Buddha. He is true to Phoenix. So, for the sake of others, the Emperor should return the red string of fate to me. Hearing the last sentence, the man's fingers paused for a moment. The floating light of the way of heaven shone on his body, dark and obscure. However, it was still impossible to look away. Eularo looked at the man eagerly. However, he saw the man smile, indescribably elegant and evil. I wanted to return it to you, but unfortunately. As he spoke, he raised the empty bag in his hand. It's too late. You really used the red string of fate on her. Eularo felt his heart beating wildly. His ears could no longer hear the sounds around him. The man retracted his hand. Wearing a white robe and a purple gauze, he stood tall like the only scenery on the edge of the way of heaven. Eularo, things have come to this point. If you don't tell me, no one will know where the red string of fate is. I don't want anyone to know about this. Otherwise, I've killed a god before. Eularo only felt a layer of sweat on his back. Not only did the other party use the red string of fate, but he also tied a dead knot. The Emperor was right. Such a thing couldn't be told. Not only because of his dereliction of duty, but also because if Buddhism found out, what would Phoenix do? Eularo had match-made for many people and knew many gods and fairies. He always had a sense of pity for men and women in the world. Although Phoenix was the leader of all Buddhas, she was an anomaly in Buddhism. Under normal circumstances, people were never very friendly to the anomaly. It was fine if these two people were fooling around, but they definitely couldn't fall in love. This was because Buddhism would not allow Phoenix, who saved all living beings, to have feelings in her heart. Therefore, the red string of fate must not be known to anyone. The Emperor was in a very bad mood. This was the aura that the immortals who came to welcome him could sense as soon as they opened the door. Although the Emperor didn't say anything, there was still a smile on his face, but his thin lips were cold. In particular, the demons that were usually locked up by him also surged out from behind him one by one. They formed into clusters of black fog, giving people a sense of oppression from the inside out. It was as if the Emperor in front of them could kill them at any time. Celestial Emperor, the immortal called out in a trembling voice. The man glanced at him casually. Where's Phoenix? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,